Oh, sorry. Shall I start from the beginning?
I would.
Right, good evening. It's now 7 p.m. and I would like to start the meeting of the Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Councillor Halden and Councillor Abbas is substituting for him tonight.
Thank you. Item 2. Sorry.
And our resident rep, Sue Hodgson, as well, sent her apologies.
Right, item 2, minutes. I move that the minutes of the Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on the 15th of February 2022 to be approved as correct record. Does any member have any comments on the minutes?
Thank you. I don't know how the other members feel, but I just feel that in the minutes, when we just put about member referred, it should say who said it and not just member. There should be a name there, because our residents are they see this and they don't know who raised or who did what. So I really think there should be a name put there and not just member.
Yeah. Thank you, Jo. Can we note that, please?
Noted. I do think it's come in because of a recommendation, but I will check those details and come back to you.
Thank you. So the minutes are approved now? Right, item 3, urgent items of business. The scrutiny officer would like to discuss the briefing note circulated.
Thanks, Councillor. Just briefly, I want to touch on the briefing note that was circulated to members last week, just about the disbanding the Task and Finish group. So it was agreed by the Housing Task and Finish group on the 6th of February that they wish to disband the task group on the proviso that the future chair of any ONS committee be informed of the work that they completed for possible inclusion in any future work programme. So under the terms of reference, the Task and Finish group has to be, they can wish it, but it has to be agreed by the Housing ONS committee. So that's why that's presented to you today for your agreement. And then if you do agree it will go to PTR just to be, so they're consulted and informed. Thank you.
Is everybody in agreement of this?
Yeah, it's difficult for me to comment because unfortunately I missed one of the meetings. But my concern would be that we're losing another level of scrutiny, and I know clearly as we go into the new municipal year and the redesignation of portfolios of directorates and whatever, and the change in the whole of the ONS situation, but and clearly we can bring this back, but I think the issue of housing stock and its delivery in Thurrock is really fundamentally important, and I'm not sure that we should be getting rid of anything at all. Whether we can make it just sit in. I don't know, rather than disband it, just say it sits there ready to be used. But it's going to be increasingly difficult in the new municipal year for scrutiny to focus, because it's going to be split up, bigger committees. They're going to be a limited number of task and finish groups are allowed to each committee. And I suspect the reasoning is part of this, but I have great reservations about getting rid of any scrutiny, and this is still a part. It's scrutinising what we do, and however way we dress it up, the delivery of housing stock, whether it be private or whether it be social housing, is massively important to the future of this borough, and I have some reservations about getting rid of this, but it's down to a majority of people, obviously.
You'd like to talk, Jo? It's a Rensel.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I haven't got reservations. I just don't think we should get rid of it. So I think that it should stay there. It's not going to improve governance if we don't have anything like that sitting there, because if we want to be open and transparent, that's the only way we're going to be able to do it. And No, I for one don't agree. I think it should carry on. I think once it goes into new committees, you'll lose that form of government. So, thank you.
Yeah, Democrats.
Yeah, just really to come back on those points was that this was the wish of the Task and Finish group was to disband on the proviso that any work going forward be included within the committee system, and if the future chair of the ONS committee, in whatever form that may be, if they then wish to come up with a Task and Finish group, that's in the gift of that committee. So that's the reason why it's being presented today, just to highlight that.
Chair, if we could seek some clarification then, because my understanding of it is, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, it is a long and complex reorganisation that we're going through, but the number of task and finish groups per the new scrutiny committees is limited. My understanding was that there are effectively going to be 3 committees, and within those committees it's permitted to have 2, and in one instance to 3. But you know, this is. You know, if we leave this in situ, I don't know how that affects what goes on next year. So my mind would be to play it safe and leave it in situ so we haven't lost it. And then when the new committees convene for the first time, post-May, they can look at what we've said. Okay, we've already got this. We'll leave that there and we'll do it. I mean, the rewriting of the constitution and the structure of the new council, for all the right reasons. Don't get me wrong. I'm not being critical of the fact that we're changing things. I think we should change things. I think it's right and proper we do. But there's a danger here. I think we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay, shall we go to the vote on it? Those in favour of disbanding? Those in favour of keeping the working group? Yeah, that's carried. Okay.
For a clarification on this, sorry, I know I'm slightly late. If the task and finish group has asked they don't want to continue, so can we, in a way, force them to continue, or how this will work? Democratic Services?
I mean, if you want to, you can, but my only caveat would be that it was the wish of the Task and Finish group that they disband. Realistically, they have only met twice in the course of the municipal year, and there haven't been any real tangible outcomes from that Task and Finish group as yet. And that's not to say there won't be in future, but I think we just have to be careful that if we continue the Task and Finish group, that it doesn't just become mission creep, and it doesn't just become something, you know, that doesn't produce any good outcomes, and that would be my only concern. Like I say, it was the wish of the Task and Finish group that they disband, but it is, in the terms of reference of the Task and Finish group, it does say that it has to be with the agreement of Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So,
Councillor Rental.
Yeah, I don't remember asking to disband it at all when I was on that Task and Finish group, so I don't remember saying that we'd stop it. So I'd like to see in the paperwork who voted for that or whatever. So I just don't think, I don't remember that happening, really.
yeah, so there was a vote at the last meeting, not the extraordinary meeting in February, but the meeting before that. So that was the 6th of February, the Housing Task and Finish Group meeting on the 6th of February that voted for that.
I don't know what to proceed on this now. I mean, what can you give?
Well, you've had a vote, but as chair, as there's been comments since then, you can have another vote. It would be in your discretion as chair to do that.
Well, shall we have another vote on it, please? Okay. Booth.
Can I just, I'm not, I think this is very confusing, to be honest, even to my understanding, for the members as well. I think maybe we need more clarification on this, or maybe we can bring this back item in next meeting with more clarity, or maybe on more guidance from Democratic Services. What in terms of if Finish and Task Group have voted to disband, then can we, like, what are the next process, you know? So can we ask them to continue? And does this mean, can we establish this again, a new task and finish group in a new calendar year? So maybe a more clarification would be helpful. So maybe if we can postpone this, Chair, and bring back to the next meeting, that would be, I think, more for the clarity.
Yeah, my only problem with that, it'd be in the new year, wouldn't it? It'd be a new setup altogether, wouldn't it? Yeah, that's the only problem.
So, Democratic Services, sorry, with Chair's permission, yeah. So if we will agree to this one, so does this mean a new calendar year, we cannot have a task and finish group? Or can we establish a new task and finish group?
Yeah, so in the new, if the new system is agreed at full council, each overview and scrutiny committee will have the ability to set up task and finish groups. They will be slightly different in that, like Councillor Spate says, the guidance is they'll be limited to 2 task and finish groups per committee, and they'll be time limited. But it is within the committee's wish and within their remit to set up task and finish groups. Yes.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the new committees, whether they'll be set up straight after the municipal year, I have no idea. I don't think there's still a lot of talk in those new groups. I think there was talk of having a 4th group because standards and audit and everything else would be, corporate would be too much for one committee. So I think that there's still time for us to have something. It won't get done straight away because we sit on the sort of overview and scrutiny of lost my train of thought now. No, we sit on the constitution group, and I don't think that's been decided, you know, properly yet. So I don't think that will take time to do. It won't be straight after the municipal year. I wouldn't think so.
No. Councillor Dillard.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm sort of sitting on the fence on this one, really, because I'm thinking to myself that perhaps we should cancel it now but put it on the work programme to decide whether we should, you know, start another one in the new year.
Councillor Bass.
Can I suggest an amendment into this? So we can agree to this task and finish groups agreement for this calendar year, and then we can leave it to next committee meeting to decide if they want to continue with this. Because then obviously, you know, I think this is last meeting or maybe there is another meeting. So we wouldn't have any meeting. So we can say those things, you know, we agree with task and finish groups recommendations for this calendar year, and then we will leave it to the next committee to decide.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Councillor.
I think it's in the remit of housing overview and scrutiny to decide on that. We can decide here whether we keep it or we don't. I just think if we give it up altogether, we'll lose something, you know, and that's my worry.
Okay, I think that's the best way for. Sorry, Councillor Spate, I didn't see you.
Sorry, no. I mean, I've got the meeting in front of me right now, and at the meeting itself that was decided, it was Councillor Watson. Looks like she was a chair. Councillor Holden and yourself were at that meeting, so there were three members. Joy, you weren't there. So from that point of view, we've got 3 members who clearly came up with the recommendations. Lucy's kindly put it before us here at 1.3, and they basically handed the remit back to this committee to make a decision. We've just taken a vote now. You know, with the greatest respect to Lee, and I believe, I don't know how, because I'm not going to put it on loud while we're in the meeting here. The interesting thing is, of course, because we've not got the minutes of this meeting, because there's nowhere for them to go to, because there isn't a subsidiary task and finish group. So somewhere in the ether there are minutes of this meeting. Looks very, you know, we've kindly got the recommendation that they've got, which was taken from 3 councillors and said bounce it back to this committee. Okay, with the numbers have now doubled, we've got 6, so I think it was 5 out of 6 have said no, we think there is validity in keeping this. Now it may well be that Councillor Watson, Councillor Holden, or yourself even, Sue, but clearly not, because you were there, don't want to sit on it. But it's at our discretion that we appoint this committee to carry on. As I said earlier, my concern is we're still on very vague ground about quite what's going to happen. And as Joy has quite rightly said, the Constitution Working Group has almost turned into a shambles because we've stopped making any sort of progress whatsoever. We've got a new SLT coming in who are looking at the Constitution. So I don't think anybody could say with any assured belief what we're going to be doing post-May. And as I say, I am worried that somebody could come in with a rod of iron, as I've seen happen before, and say, no, you only want two, you want this. So if we've got something in place, you've then physically got to get rid of it. It's probably harder to get rid of this committee than it is to create a new one. And it's obviously clearly a bone of contention. We've spent 10 minutes talking about it already this evening when it was probably meant to be a nod through. So I feel that we owe it to the principle of this committee to say now we've been asked, do we agree to get rid of it? The answer in the majority is no, we don't. So it remains in place, and then it can be dealt with by whoever constitutes this committee after the election.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Is that okay? Thank you.
So, only that.
Yeah.
Councillor
Councillor
Pearson,
Renshaw.
only because Black Shots is on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Me also with Teviot Avenue in Aveley.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, item 5, portfolio holder report for housing. Good evening, Councillor Johnson. Would you like to present your report? Do you remember? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for agreeing to me to leave once I've finished and questions are over. Good evening all. This report presents the whole year performance information for 22-23, as well as key events and factors which have actually shaped the service delivery and strategic direction for 23-24. Services are offered to over 10,000 households across the borough, with around 9,900 homes owned within the council's housing stock, used as general needs homes, sheltered housing and council-owned temporary accommodation. Performance is routinely monitored and robustly challenged within the housing service, and I believe in this committee as well. The new Housing Performance Board, that's now been established, which does include an invite for the portfolio to attend. I haven't actually attended any yet. I'm not sure how many there have been, but I think it's only 1 or 2 at the most. But my idea was to let the board find its own feet, and perhaps whoever the portfolio holder is in the new municipal year can come back to that meeting a bit like we are here today. So I think that's probably a good way forward for that one. Out of the 8 key performance indicators, 4 of them achieved their target, and the other 3 they did miss by very fine margins. Not an excuse, but they were very fine, like the 0.8%, 0.7% and 0.4%, so they were very close, so hopefully they will pick up as they go forward. The key area that did fail to reach the target came from planned maintenance around repairs. However, I would like to report that over 25,000 repairs were actually completed in 22-23, and 99.3% of that was at a first-time fix rate. All tenant satisfaction ratings relating to the repair service exceeded targets, and 10 out of the 12 overall housing service tenant satisfaction indicators achieved their respective targets, with only 1 missing by 0.2%. The new and additional homes continue to be added to the council stock through new housing development and planned targeted property acquisition. Housing strategy continues to be delivered, supporting the work to deliver a new operating model for the council and achieve organisational sustainability. And investment continues to be made in improving the condition, energy efficiency and thermal comfort of our homes. Strong links have now been established between housing, adult social care and public health, where all stakeholders remain committed to maintaining further developing these bonds now that housing is moving into the Place Directorate. There's an aim to leverage the skills and influence of regeneration and economic development colleagues to further support integrated locality working. Work is underway to ensure the housing service is in the best possible position to meet the new regulatory regime from the regulator of social housing. and the Housing Service is also reacting to and preparing for the new Building Safety Regulator. Financially, the HRA services achieve balanced outturns and the pressures on Housing General Fund are well managed in general terms. However, the challenges facing the Council are well publicised and we all know that, and this report should be read in that context. I will leave it there if that's okay with you, Chair, and take any questions you wish to put forward.
Does any member have any questions? Councillor Spade.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, thank you, Councillor Johnson, for the report. I think generally you can take this as a good report. Right, you know, if we go into a sort of Ofsted speak, good rather than outstanding. I think it's showing good indicators, and I think the team behind it deserve a considerable amount of praise for probably getting us to where we are. I think it's the report suggests things are better than what we may sometimes believe them to be, and that's always, it's a bit like crime, isn't it? It's the fear of crime is always worse than crime itself, and it may well be our perception of our housing situation is actually worse than what the reality is. So I think there are some good points to come out of this. Where I would say, and I would ask you, I mean, you're going to have the benefit. You've got far and away more benefit of hindsight than me looking at housing and targeting and what have you. My concerns, particularly in terms of satisfaction performance, are, and I think I've mentioned this at previous meetings of this committee, that I worry about anything where we're setting a target as low as 75% and then saying it's great because we've got lots of green figures on this table, which we have, and people can only be asked to meet a target, but I don't think we should take any great satisfaction that we're beating 75%, and even where we've done really well, with one exception, which is 90%. Sorry, two exceptions. One is 90% and one is 89%. The others are sort of mid 70s. So yes, we've hit the target, but there is still scope for further improvement. But if you know, we're desperate in this council to try and find some green shoots and to see some corners turned, and I think that this annual report shows that there is the potential to continue improvement, and to that extent I would congratulate the ones that are successes, but by no means is it something that we can get complacent about. And you're quite right also, you know, the financial situation is going to be testing going forward, particularly in HRA. You know, I'm concerned that, you know, we all as councillors on a regular basis now are dealing with questions and queries and pleas, for want of a better phrase, from residents who are in dire straits. We're getting better at dealing with them, but the fundamental problem is we ain't got enough housing stock, which we all know. I've somehow got to come out with a question at the end of this, which is really, you know, I hope you share. That's what I'll phrase it by saying. I hope you share with me the fact that this is something that's very much on the right road, but there is still room for improvement. I suppose that's what I'm trying to say. I hope that's what you do share.
Can I come back?
Anybody else? Questions? Councillor Dillier.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for your report, Councillor Johnson. Just wondering about the way the statistics are prepared. Is it the same throughout every local authority housing organisation? Do they all have the same statistics? Are they all prepared in exactly the same way, or does Thurrock do its own thing?
Well, I'll come back to you first then, Councillor Lydia. Sorry, that's a really good question. It's not one I've put to the officers, but I know we do benchmark all the way through, so I'm assuming that, yes, most of them, you know, if not exactly the same, are around the same lines. But if we could go back to what Councillor Spate said, I totally agree with everything you said. The green shoots are here. 75%, yeah, it doesn't sound like a great figure to aspire to, but if combining the two questions together if that is something that all local authorities do, then, you know, that's where we are at the moment. Maybe we could look to look for bigger figures there. And I've always said to the officers all the time, that let's try and improve. And it was the main reason I brought up the three KPIs that didn't meet their target. It was very, very minimal that they didn't meet it by. So it's something that we are continuing to work with. But I don't know about the answer to that one, Councillor Lydia. I will look at that because it is a good point. If everybody's marking their targets from down here, then okay, why don't we step up and do it in a better way?
Yeah, it's just a case of standardisation and everybody sort of comparing pears with pears and apples with apples, and then you can compare properly across all local authorities and see how well you're really doing.
But as I'm sorry to hug it, if we are only doing it at 75%, and that's what everyone's doing, I think you've got a really good question. Maybe we should start saying, well, why can't our housing service be 80 or 85%? I've not had this conversation with officers, so don't hold them to anything on this because I've not had that conversation. I think it's a really good point to put forward. And just to go back again, Councillor Spate, I do share your concerns about a lack of property, which is it's countrywide. It's not just here in Thurrock. It really is. I would like to. You were saying about it probably feels worse than it really is. There are a lot of things that come through on housing. A lot of the casework I get and you really have to really bear down to find where the real problem is. It's not always a stock problem. It really isn't. It is sometimes the information you get about what someone's doing or how they're willing to try and help themselves. That you have to remember that if someone's adequately housed, that goes in those questions, in those marks, and that's really where the council has to stop. What I think we are doing well, and I will say I think all the officers do this. They do go that little bit further and dig. Not every time, but most of the time they do. And with one particular case, I know you've just been mentioning it just now. We've had a very good conclusion on it. That probably wasn't a stock issue. That was an issue, where the person was and what they were doing. But we look at it a little bit deeper, and that there was another person involved in that really pushed it to the fore and got something done. So yes, I do agree. I share all your sentiments in that completely, and I do think all the officers need a pat on the back because it is going forward. It is getting better, but it is difficult.
Yeah, just to come. The other, I was going to do it as a sort of supplemental question, but one, and it's something that we're going to raise on Thursday evening at HOSC, I'm sure. And it's something that I came across in a conversation with members of the adult social care team, where we made a lot of progress in driving community-led services and community interaction, and the report refers to the first integrated locality team established in Stamford and Corringham, which I know has had some good outcomes. The concern that I got from staff members that they were worried that with all the reorganisation that's taking place and the new directorates and whatever's going on, there was a genuine concern, and they probably looked to me to raise it here, and I hope you will endorse my feelings. I think we made great strides in locally driven services, both in housing and both in adult social care. And I really do hope that as we move through 2024 and into 2025, that we don't scrap the progress that we made, and we really look to continue to be an innovative, forward-thinking council where we bring that local connectivity to the fore, because then we will find a lot of the things that you just referred to, that I've just referred to, and I think we'll get a really better picture of where we are as a council as well.
John.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I can't believe it, Councillor Spate. I'm agreeing with everything you're saying tonight. Yes, I totally agree. And in fact, if you go further, when the Section 114 was brought into this council, it was made clear that local connectivity is paramount for the council to go forward, through the whole general account, not just the housing revenue account. But it's really important. We have made good steps, and I certainly would not look on too kindly to, you know, to dropping back and letting those letting that fail, because, you know, that is imperative for the whole council, not just the housing revenue account.
Right. Ryan Farmer, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in and touch on the point regarding measuring satisfaction and the approach that other authorities might be taking. One of the key things that has come into effect is the Social Housing Regulation Act, and within that there are 12 now nationally reported tenant satisfaction measures with very, very clear methodology, which social housing providers, regardless if it's a local authority or a private registered provider, will need to be adhering to and collecting the information and reporting on. The first national statistics will be published in summer/autumn of this year. And although, as you say, you know, comparing pairs with pairs, there are such a diverse range of housing providers that even once everyone has published their national statistics, a degree of benchmarking and comparator groups needs to be looked at. Within the report of Councillor Johnson's, it does say about a geographical group of providers we've been kind of linked with as being South Central local authorities and ALMOs of up to 10,000 houses in the stock. So I'm sure as the committees move forward, we'll be looking to bring forward reports on that, but there is now a standardised national approach to reporting like that.
Thank you. Councillor Renshaw.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Johnson. Should be pleased, really, with yourself, even if you do leave it, you know, for the next year. Who knows what's coming? But I do think in Thurrock we've done a lot of good things, and I don't think they're praised enough with things we do. You know, I know I mentioned it quite a bit with Chadwell. You know, the site we did on Chadwell. It's a shame that we didn't do more of those. You know, because that was well praised by everybody. The length and breadth of Thurrock. So even out, I think people said about that small, and it's quite a community. It's been made into quite a small community, and has worked. So I think we've got to give, and Evelina knows, I will give praise where it's due. You know, if we're doing things well, then we should keep on. I just hope, Councillor Johnson, we're going to follow through with, we do need more housing, social housing, whether we like it or not, and whether we agree with it or not, we do need social housing. We need somewhere even for youngsters to start from, you know, somewhere, and we're not actually fulfilling that. And I know sometimes, you know, I hate to mention Blackshots again, but everything goes into that at the moment, and sometimes other things get lost. So I think we've got to look at some way of doing it, whether we bring in housing associations, which I think we've got to start working with, because it's the only way of even. I was talking today with someone, prefabricated houses. Even we should be looking at that again, you know, because at least they're warm and no mould and everything else. So I think we should. I just want to see that we are working towards that. Thank you.
Councillor John.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm referring to Blackshots. I really hope I'm not talking out of turn, but this is, for me, the project we're going through with Blackshots and Teviot's to a certain extent, but Blackshots more so, is for me the catalyst that might put the council back on its tracks with central government. You know, because we have to borrow to do this. We know we are, and I really do hope and pray. And I say, I'm looking at my colleague officers over there. Well, I'm not. I'm going to look this way and say, but for me, this is the catalyst of putting us on that forefront of the central government saying, yes, okay, we do trust you again. You know, we are. You can do this now, because we will have to borrow money, and I think those two combined, if we get them out, gives us an extra 100 and something properties, which will all be council properties. So, you know, we are striving, but I totally agree it's not quick enough. I do hear that a certain councillor asked for the possibility of a crisis panel board or whatever, you know, and I'm agreeing with him again. It's a very, very good idea. I personally will be speaking to the officers after next week to see if we can facilitate that in some way. it sounds a great idea. I don't know what the ins and outs will be, but I would really like to have a look at it. But I can't see it getting done in before PERDA, to be perfectly honest. So, but I will speak to them because I do think it's a good idea. Going back to what Ryan said about the benchmarking and such, I believe that Councillor Lydiard's question was more along the lines of not are we doing it the same as everyone else, but why do we set it at 75%? Why not 80? Why not 85? That's something I'd like to maybe look at in the future. Well, I'll pass that on to whoever is sitting here come May as well. But thank you for the questions.
Councillor Rinsell.
Yeah, just to pick up on what Councillor Johnson just said, I think sometimes we use PERDA as an excuse to not do things, and I think some things don't affect, PERDA doesn't always affect everything. It's not out there to try and do something with the electoral cycle. I think we're here as councillors to help the residents. We're not always here to politically to ram home something. We're here at the end of the day to help residents, and I think even as you mentioned Black Shots again, but that's something that we've got to, it's going to come along naturally, hopefully. And I think, something about PERDA annoys me sometimes because it's like an excuse that we don't have to do it because of, So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rinsell. Is there any more questions, Councillor Johnson? Councillor Spain?
Sorry, it wasn't a question. Sorry, I wasn't. You threw in Councillor Johnson. I was just going to say because it's interesting that this item normally, when reports are put forward, they're to be noted, and we've expressed in the past. So I was just going to make a recommendation when you finish the debate that we do vote to note this report. But I would also like to add the caveat that we recognise it includes progress, and that this committee recognises and thanks the hard work of all the housing teams involved in getting the report together and the progress that we've made. I'm sure somebody can take a quick paraphrase that down as a recommendation.
So,
Councillor Rinsell?
just quickly add to that I don't think we realise that with Black Shots how hard it has been for everybody to come together with this, because it's a big job, and I don't think people realise how hard it is. So I personally would like to thank you all for all that. I might not agree with everything, and you'll soon know it when I don't, but I think we've got to give people credit where credit's due. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Feel free to leave. Thank you. That's all right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, so that's a recommendation.
There's no recommendations in portfolio holder reports. I can note what you said for the minutes, but there's no recommendations.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item 6 on page 11. Findings of stock condition survey of housing portfolio. Can I ask Alistair Wood to present this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, this report touches on the stock condition survey that was conducted and also the future investment needs. This report doesn't have any recommendations, it's for information only. So the report sort of sets out the approach that we've taken to stock condition over previous years and the approach that we took in 22. Whereby we undertook a 30% representative example of our stock. It's inclusive of blocks and individual archetypes, and the numbers are sort of set out within section 2.5 of the report. Under section 2.6, that sets out the sort of main aspects of what a stock condition survey encompasses, and it's really to gauge a measure of our stock in relation to how we're maintaining it, is the investment going in the right place, but also it's critical for us to have an up-to-date knowledge of our assets so we can aim investment needs in the right places. So the property selection that was taken, the 30% sample, was a representative of each and every archetype within each and every street within the borough itself. So set out under 3.2 is all the individual archetypes that were included in the survey sample. So the asset investment needs, it clearly shows under section 4.4 the main areas that it's needed for 5 years, and then that goes on to the sort of overall 30 years. What I'd say about this table is our weakest data set is around external works, and so the information that's captured in this stock condition data was then blended with everything that we know from the programs that we've delivered year in, year out, but also what's was captured in the previous stock condition survey. So we continually update the information. So each and every archetype is represented by the most up-to-date information that we hold on them individual archetypes. It touches on later on in the report that under the new future delivery model that we're embarking on, there's a requirement been set in there for a further stock condition survey for everything that wasn't surveyed under this stock condition survey exercise, and that was also to include a sustainability study. The asset need and the future asset need is evolved very much in recent years, especially as we sort of move towards net carbon zero, and therefore we found it critical to ensure that we update our information on the stock even further and to really hone in on some of these numbers, because the financial investment needs, it creates a challenge for every local, every social housing provider. We're not individual in that, and therefore for us we're going to continue to update our knowledge through our programs, but also we're going to try and do that in a very managed way, so we don't just continue to spend money just trying to capture that, because obviously we need to invest in the right areas and utilise the resources we have effectively. So the report also captured around fitness for human habitation standards and HHSRS, and also damp and mould, which is included in this report. But this report, as referenced under 5.6, isn't specifically around damp and mould, and that was presented to this committee in September last year. So I just touched on the energy performance, and so overall we're broadly where we expected we were around energy performance, and obviously the future needs in terms of meeting EPC C rating by 2030 is a challenge for us, and as again for every social housing provider. So we will be updating that information about where we can try and seek funding. So we've been successful around gaining funding under things like Social Housing Carbonation Fund and Eco Funding. Just in the last couple of years alone, we've attracted over £4 million in external funding, and we've also just recently submitted a bid for more funding under Social Housing Carbonation Fund, which hopefully we'll be successful for, because we will continue to look outwards to try and bolster our resource in terms of meeting our need. So in conclusion, I would say it broadly paints a good picture in respect to the areas of which need investment and our alignment to what we know of the stock, but clearly there's challenges ahead. But I'll leave it there for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Does anybody have any questions? Sir Renshaw.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Alistair. Just if you took black shots out of the whole lot, would it make a difference to a lot of this? Because we've got probably the whole of the 3 blocks are full of mould and God knows what. So if you just took them out, would it alter the data that you've got here?
The simple answer is yes, because it is currently included. But thank you for that. Because it is absolutely critical that things like black shots and Teviot proceed, because of the significant investment need that they particularly have. So that's why we've been, really supportive in trying to move it forward. So they were picked up, they were referred back on immediate identification, and they were referenced into missing smoke alarms or the fire detection system, etc. So they've already been addressed in that regard.
Thank you.
Councillor Lydiard.
Thanks for your report. I'm just wondering, how do you know where to start? You've got all this money, all these problems, and I think, the sort of energy assessments is a good one as well, but how do you know where to start?
this is why exercise like this is so critical for us, because we absolutely have to focus our resource in areas of most need, and therefore having up-to-date asset information. And that, as I say, all of this goes into a central database around asset condition, and where we blend all the information that we hold, we can then focus on the key priorities. So it isn't us just pointing at streets and guessing. It is actually based on evidence from our asset condition. So that's how we make our decisions.
What is the priority?
So external works is pointed in here, and that is mainly because since 2014, when Transforming Homes was really incepted, the early is really focused on internal condition, decent homes, effectively kitchens, bathrooms and electrical wiring, etc. So we always knew that external works were backloaded, and we've been touching on them in more recent years, but we've still got that path to go on for our future investment.
Councillor Spate.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got two questions. The first relates to 3.2 and how we've got this selection of properties. I find it quite interesting. If you look at the figures, it's just the average looks to be just over 50%. So we've identified houses and dwellings, shall I say, that we wish to include in the sample. For example, flats, maisonettes, 1 to 2 bedrooms, low-rise, 1,494, and we've looked at 902 of those, of the ones that were identified as part of the sample, and you can follow that through. You know, for example, bedsits, high-rise, 67. We've looked at 25. I can't quite get my head around. You've identified properties that we want to look at, but we haven't looked at them because clearly almost half of the identified sample haven't had an inspection, or am I reading the table wrong?
So no, you're right in that regard. So the properties that have been selected, give it is the 30% percentage of the amount of properties that we own of being that particular archetype, but also we've then had to overlay that with each and every area of the borough to give us that representative example. So there is going to be disparity in some areas. We absolutely recognise that, but this is the broadest sort of cohort that we could capture under one sort of stock condition survey of this nature.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I didn't explain that. I get your answer. I just think, you know, we identified a sample, so we're going out on a figurative exercise that we know we're going to produce a table at the end of it, and we say we want to look at 1,400 flat maisonettes, 1 to 2 beds, 524 that are high rise, whatever the other figures are, 46 bungalows, and that's not our. You know, we're picking a sample number out of our overall stock. I mean, that's not. You know, it's just as included in sample, so that's not our overall stock. So we've identified a set number of properties to look at, and I just wondered why we haven't actually looked at all of those properties that we identified. Is that a shortage of personnel, or is it residents saying no, you can't come in, or what exactly is the reason why we haven't fulfilled the number?
Okay, then, thank you for that. So, yeah, I fully understand the question now. So, if you look at the total at the bottom of it, there's 5,048 properties that were actually identified. We were only ever targeting the 30%, so the 2,939 figure. So, we identified those properties because we ultimately do get sort of dropouts and residents that are unable to provide access on them sort of certain days. So, that's why we identified far more properties than actually what's needed in our sample. So, yeah.
Sorry, that explains that. Thank you. And the other question, and it sort of follows on from where Joy came into. If we scroll down and we get into, unfortunately, into discussing damp and mould, which is almost seems a prerequisite of any of our meetings. If you look at that table there of what's been identified at risk, we've got slight risk, moderate risk, severe risk, and we haven't got any properties at all. From the archetypes identified that are down as severe risk. Now, I personally have been in a substantial number of properties over the last 20 years, but let's just take it back a couple of years, and I've actually visited some with my, and seen it with my own eyes, where you've got water running down the wall, where you've got damp on the windows, where you've got mould all over the place, where it's clearly a very unpleasant scenario. And I've seen photographs from lots more. Where in my other hat, I quite frequently get reports from people, residents in flats, showing me how bad their houses are. So I find it quite strange that at any given time we take a sample of properties and we say there are no properties in Thurrock at the moment that we're surveyed that are at severe risk of damp and mould. And I'm quite frankly, I've got to be honest and say I cannot believe that. There must be a significant number of properties that are at severe risk, because it follows that we've seen properties that are actually full of damp and mould. So I don't quite understand, and therefore I question the validity of the survey when it tells me that we haven't got any properties at severe risk of damp and mould in Thurrock. I just can't believe that. I'm really sorry, but I can't.
Thank you. I'll note that. In further to that, under 5.5, it does actually identify as well that we did actually, within our sample properties, we actually selected the properties of the highest prevalence of damp and mould. We specifically targeted those as well. Clearly, the information has come back. We've got all this condition information that was captured on the day, including photographic evidence. Personally, I haven't seen any of the properties, gone into some of the ones that we've gone through, but that was what was reported back. We're all very much, unfortunately, aware of severe cases, and we work really hard to try and address those and early identification to try and remediate and sort of improve homes to tackle that at the earliest doors. But that is the finding of the condition survey from the independents.
Okay.
I don't really need to follow. I mean, as I say, it just worries me. We probably ought to have somewhere in that table then how many have actually got damp and mould. Maybe it should be another column that gives us a clue. But as I say, I just, it doesn't suddenly happen overnight. They don't go to bed one night, our residents, in a house that's nice and dry and has got a slight risk, and then they wake up in the morning and the water's running down the walls. It doesn't happen that way. It's a progression of time. And in some instances, let's be honest, a progression of time where the residents themselves are at fault. We all know that we've all been in properties where we look and we say, actually, you could have done this and you could have done that. So I'm not playing a blame game here. I'm just saying I'd love to know that figures that I was looking at this committee were absolutely spot on, and I just really don't find this table credible. But that may just be me.
Sorry. It's obviously I can only present what was found at the time. So.
Thank you. Councillor Rinsell.
Yeah, I know we're not here really to talk about damp and mould, but if it's in this report, and we really do, and I'm like Neil, I've been in many of the high-rise and disgusted that I wouldn't even sleep there because it is so bad. I don't think sometimes we realise what those people are living in. I think I had one the other day where somebody told somebody that, can you wash your mattresses? No, you can't, because it's in there and it's in the walls. It's not something we're going to solve without taking them down, and we know that now. But I think, as Neil said, it should have been in the report, because it shows that you're actually doing your job, because we know there is damp and mould, and we're solving it. So it's really making it that we are doing something, you're doing something brilliant. Because we are going to take those blocks down, and we are going to take people out of there that actually could be ill with what they're living with. We've got young children in there living with what they've got to deal with, and it's wrong. I've been in there when ceilings have come down and people walking through sewerage, and it's not right. And when you've seen it for yourself, you can actually associate with what they're having to deal with, and most of us don't have to deal with that at all. So I do think that something should have been in here, not to be in here to show us how many places have got damp and mould, but I suppose it is in a way, but just proving that you are solving it in a way, because if we've got 168 properties in the hot rise all suffering, that's 168 we're going to solve. So I think it could be, it's detrimental to you in a way, because we're not showing those and then showing that we're actually doing something about it, or we're going to, So I think that on your part that can be good, to show we are getting there. But that's just a small thing. Thanks, Alice.
Councillor Spate.
Yeah, just to add on from what Joy said though, and I know Joy is incredibly passionate about 3 blocks and will be dancing a jig that we all look forward to seeing when they come down. And she goes to bed at night looking forward to it, I'm sure. But I do think as well we mustn't let the focus entirely be on high rise. I have been in certainly I'm looking at here to the classification in front of me, low rise flat maisonette, 1 to 2 bedrooms, and I've very recently been in at least one of those where it was just not pleasant. It's interesting that criteria in terms of the percentage, 8.87%, it's only 22 out of 902, and again, I hate to be trying to be smart-ass with hindsight, but I just worry that these are not a really, because I know from speaking to residents, there are a lot of people, and particularly in maisonettes, where you've got household on top of household on top of household, but mainly only to 3 or sometimes 2 levels, and they're some of those buildings are getting quite old now, and you look at them from outside and you wonder what state they're going to be inside, and then when you go in, they're not great. So, we mustn't only focus. Tower blocks get all the sexy attraction because they're great pictures and whatever, and those pesky newspaper people love to feature them. But we've got a core of other buildings that are also at risk. So we just. So I'm not going to harp on about it anymore. But I just find it difficult to believe everything that I'm reading in front of me.
I have a question. On page 14, 4.4, asset investment needs, when it says external works at the top one, does this include fences around blocks of low-rise flats and maisonettes? Some of them are in poor condition, and the need to replace and repair fences.
So yes, it does include the wider parts of estates and the boundary of council boundaries, but not every individual fence between individual properties, where that falls to resident responsibility under the repairs policy, but boundary fencing, yes.
Only I've recently been over Rockington, and some of them are in really bad state of repair, Thank you. Okay, shall we now move to the recommendation? Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee are asked to review and comment and challenge 1.1 of the assets investment needs of the housing portfolio. 1.2 key properties for investment of the housing asset. Is that agreed? Agreed. Sorry, no, not.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Chair? I don't actually think it's worded very well, to be honest, because assets and investments, I don't think we know everything about assets and investments, and it doesn't sit well with me, sorry.
Councillor Spain.
I get that. I mean, we were asked to review, comment and challenge, which I believe we've just done in the last 15 minutes. So from that point of view, Joy, we have actually done what we were. I mean, you're right. Probably the word here is recommendations, because we're asked to recommend something that's just happened. So the recommendation indicates it's something that happens in the future. We've actually just done it. And I think we could maybe agree that we have reviewed, commented and challenged the assets and investment and the key priorities. Just change that and make it a past tense rather than a future tense, and that solves the problem for you.
Thank you. Let's agree. Okay, item 7, update of procurement and delivery of partner for housing works. Can I ask Adelina to present this item, please?
So I'm actually asking Alistair to present this item on our behalf today.
Sorry, I can't hear.
I'm asking Alistair to present the item on my behalf today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hello. So the report, as members will recognise, is largely the same report that was been presented on the 15th of February at the ONS. The main update is at the very start of the report, where it touches on the process that has been ongoing since that last ONS meeting, whereby the first stage of the procurement exercise has now concluded. All I can say on that at the moment is we did receive 5 bids from the market. They're currently going through the evaluation stage now, and so the next stage will commence, the next formal stage will commence on the 20th with any successful bidders that go through the first stage. So I'm happy to take any questions on that. As I say, I'm happy to run through any other parts of the report, but otherwise the report is largely the same as what it was previously.
Thank you. Councillor Lydiard.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Alistair. In terms of the assessment, you're presumably doing that yourself with a group of people. Is there a role for members to oversee or to just be involved or anything like that?
Took my question.
Oh, well done.
So there is the working group with members of this committee, and that's where we will report back on that. But in terms of the evaluation, no, that's not something, particularly at this stage. And later stages, there will be tenant representation undertaking marking as well.
So we will be involved in this sort of process, but not at this stage.
You'll be informed of it. Do you want to...
Let me take that. So obviously the scrutiny that is provided through the work of the working group is the traditional level of scrutiny on this procurement. That is obviously already taking place, and we're meeting sort of fairly regularly at the sort of key intervals. So that is sort of the opportunity. The evaluation of tender is not something that members undertake. It's an officer sort of a task. We've got residents representatives also doing evaluations, but that's in the later stages of the tenders, not those initial stages. And we've obviously got the procurement consultants as well as sort of technical. For example, somebody from finance is sort of marking and evaluating with us sort of the technical bits of those bits. But there is no role for members to evaluate at any stage. But you will get to challenge us through the work of the working group.
Right. So no contractors will be ruled out or ruled in at this present moment without members being involved at some point.
Members will be informed and kept up to date, and we will sort of show you our thinking and where we took the sort of the various sort of submissions, but it is not going to be a member decision whether a contractor or a bidder goes through or doesn't.
I wasn't intending that there should be a member decision at all in any sort of way or form, but I'm thinking of just an oversight of the whole process, so that officers don't make the decision solely.
Yeah, so as I say, this is why I think that the working group is really aiding us with that task, and obviously yourself and a few members from here sit on it. And as you know, we want this group to continue the terms of reference as such that it works all the way until the targeted award date, which is September of this year. So obviously, and we really value that, and we need it because it's quite a significant procurement. The other way in which this is the oversight of politicians is taking place is by those monthly update reports to Cabinet. Obviously, they come here now because it just ties in with the timing, but those will continue being updated and reported to Cabinet on a monthly basis. So Councillor Johnson is presenting that to his fellow Cabinet members to note and sort of be challenged there as well.
Councillor Renshaw.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think I know where Councillor Lydiard's coming from. I think we've, as a working group, we work really well. I think in the light of what's happened to Thurrock, we've got to look at it. You know, this is a big procurement and a lot of money, and I think we've got to look at it in the right way. Does it end up coming to council through cabinet? Or is it nothing? Is it a decision of? Say that again, Evelina. Sorry.
It's a cabinet decision.
It
It's
is
not
a cabinet
council
decision.
yeah.
No, it's all right. Okay.
Councillor Spain.
Thank you, Chair. We've had a great deal of conversations about this whole project and the length of time and the money and whatever involved, and that discussion is now history and recorded and has gone on, and Cabinet have made their decisions. We've done our overview and our scrutiny, and we've reported back, and I think it's fair to say there is a general level of concern among this committee, and has been certainly in the past year that I've served on it, about, but we are, at the end of the day, we can only raise our concerns. Cabinet then makes a decision, and Cabinet has made a decision and moved on, and that's how democracy works, and we have to go with that. What slightly concerns me, and this is a reflection of a general, we've changed the way that we share information with members and the public, and the public is probably the most important part about it, in terms of our reporting of minutes of meetings and whatever. And again, I see here, you know, in 3.2, where it talks about the key issues raised by prospective bidders, and at this point, I think there was, memory serves me right, I know we've narrowed it down, but there were a significant number of people who came in after the initial expression of the tender and whatever, and then we've got 6 prospective bidders who attended the briefing session, and they came up clearly with questions that reflect, I think, some of the issues that we've raised in this committee over, certainly in the time that I've been on it. I've just found it interesting. We paraphrase it all. I'm not saying dumb it down, but we shorten everything. So we've got some of the bidders raise questions on the financial model and expenditure splits and how it would meet current and future service demands. I think that's something that we've spoken about here. Of, you know, a 20-year contract, or you know, a 10-year with a 5 and a 5, if we're going to give it its proper name. You know, how the heck can we predict everything that's in there? And it clearly, some of the bidders have raised those. We've got queries on the capital budget and the level of capital investment, something that we've talked about, the amount of money that's actually going to be required to do the things that we need to do over this huge length of time. Does it meet compliance? There were queries over risk management. So they said, I would have liked, and it's too late now, but I would have liked a matter of record to have a broader description of some of the queries that were raised by these bidders. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, Cabinet will probably get a more informed position. They will be briefed, and there'll probably be a pre-meeting briefing to go into detail, because some of the information is bound to be exempt, and rightly so. But you know, again, it's a bit like reporting of council minutes. We're taking things now down to single line reporting. If you go back to the best value report, one of the criticisms of our council is that we don't accurately record what we do, and I'm not sure that, you know, okay, it means maybe another 2 or 3 sheets of A4 paper somewhere, putting more information. I would have liked to have known more about what these 6 people raised queries on. I think it would have been useful to us, not necessarily for this project now, but you know, we're trying to grow the council. We're trying to get better as a council. We're trying to get better councillors. And I'm sure everybody in this room as a councillor acknowledges that we can all get better at what we do. But we've got to learn as we go along, and we only learn by seeing information and hearing it. So I'm just sort of noting it for the SLT, really, to take note as they move forward. And, you know, they're going to be looking at what we do. We've got a new finance director. I'm sure will be very, very interested in some of the issues that have been raised here. But I would just like to note that, you know, I think we probably... deserve is too strong a word, but it would be useful for us to get it. But in terms of learning and going forwards with other projects and other procurement processes, just trust us with a little bit more information, because I'm sure we'll make good use of it.
Councillor Renshaw.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Neil. There's a lot of, in 3.2, there's a lot of the word risk used in there, and I recommendations just to note the contents of this report I don't think is good enough. I think that, I hope, once the chair who is the chair, you know, I know Sue's only subbing tonight, but the chair should take this to Cabinet and give our views of what we've said over the months that we've been doing this. And I hope that, because I don't think enough chairs take things to Cabinet in the way it should happen. You know, that is the way you should do. If the views of your committee, you should actually take those. I think I've one of the only councillors that's taken things to Cabinet, you know, and I think on cleaning and greening, and I think we should, if we chair something and there is good substantial questions here, should be taken to Cabinet so they actually know. It's all right just writing something down, but I think they should know what our views were. And I think that we are opening ourselves up, and we've got to be careful that we don't, something doesn't happen again, you know, in what we're doing now. So I think the risk factor, we've got to look at what could happen, you know, and I think Neil's right, we should have a little bit more information, because how can we note something we don't really know everything about? So I find that really hard. Thank you.
Evelina?
So if I may just respond to both of the points. So actually you couldn't be there last time, Councillor Spade, but at the February meeting, both of the working group and then here at the Overall Scrutiny, we actually debated those bits of feedback in detail, and there is also attached to the previous update, because as I know, as we said, sort of Alistair and myself, this is now monthly update to Cabinet. So obviously that's quite a huge threshold in terms of scrutiny. It's quite well cited across. But in the September one, I would just maybe suggest that there's a really good appendix to the previous update that talks about the new brief, the sort of the information brief back to the to those bidders. So that really addresses every single one of those points as to how we took it. And obviously for those who were here sort of last time in February, we also told you that we held another briefing. So there were two briefings with the bidders. One was held online, which was the middle of January, and then one was held in person, which was the 31st of January here in the council's chambers, where we've had I think eight bidders attend, and this was already after we've issued the new brief to them, obviously addressing all of the concerns from the initial briefing and from the sort of clarifications we got through the tender portal. And this was the one where we got really very positive feedback and people sort of suggesting that they will absolutely be bidding. And as we now know, we have got 5 bids, which is absolutely brilliant from where we're sitting. You know, if you know, on the flip side, if the market was not reassured through those briefings and through the sort of how we responded to it, you know, we might have ended up with no bidders and no bids. But we've got 5 bids. We're in the process of evaluating it, so we're sort of really fairly confident that we have absolutely crossed the line where we can, you know, talk to those then individual contractors and, you know, carry on with the process. So we'll carry on updating this through the Cabinet, depending what the new overall scrutiny structure is. But I would say, because it's going to Cabinet, each time there is an opportunity, we are happy to be bringing an update, because, as I say, it's a monthly feature now on the Cabinet agenda. Thank you.
Councillor Lydia.
Thanks, Chair. Just wondering, do you have some sort of archive where all of the important emails, documents are stored? I sort of refer back to my time working with contracts, and one of the criticisms was that you know, we lost some information. Oh yeah, what happened to that? Would you like to have a think about that if you don't do it already? Having an archive where the whole department puts important stuff into one space that's you know, looked after and is secure for the future.
So we're using the facility of SharePoint as a sort of joint folder for this project, where all of the key documents get saved. There are some emails in there as well, because obviously some emails are absolutely key. There is also the second element, which is the council's tendering portal, where again every single bit of information that is issued, that is requested, that is responded to, is also saved. And once that exercise is finished, that then gets archived for future sort of looking into. I think your point around individual emails going forward, sometimes especially when it comes to a dispute point or something like that, it is very often as to, you know, who said what at which point. So I think we would save the key emails, but I don't necessarily think that we would be saving every single email that we've got on that exchange. But obviously we have got archive system for emails as well through Mimecast, I want to say. Mimecast, that we can, you know, retrieve emails so they're not lost, as you know, as long as we don't delete them, which obviously the rule is that you don't. But yeah.
Thanks for that, because I mean, you know, staff move on, move around, whatever, and within 2 or 3 years, a lot of your knowledge can be gone. But I'm pleased to see that's happening. Thanks.
Councillor Spain.
All right, thanks. Again, forgive me for being thick if I am. Could somebody just tell me a little bit more about what 5.2 means? And I'll read it because obviously people will be looking at it. A resident engagement strategy and stakeholder matrix is being developed for this procurement. Residents will be integrated into the process of engagement and evaluation post-competitive dialogue. The development of communications that will give residents information about this opportunity has begun. Clearly, we're not at, I don't quite know where we are in terms of post-competitive dialogue or what that means, but can you just explain to me what that actually means? Because I don't really have a clue.
So we, as we said, we will be engaging residents in the evaluation. We say post-competitive dialogue, so it's the last sort of stage really in terms of evaluation. So this is where the bidders are essentially putting together a package and a proposal for us, tailored to us, having, you know, been through detailed dialogue sessions on individual items. So say, for example, IT system is going to be an item to be debated. I don't know, TUPE, for example, will be an item to be sort of debated through the dialogue. So that's when tailored package is really put together, and then residents kind of come in and evaluate it. The resident engagement through that, so what we've effectively done through our resident engagement team, we have reached out to a number of residents and groups to ask for the nominations on to take part in this evaluation. So as an example, we went out to resident associations that we know exist. We went out to resident groups that we know exist. We went out to our complainants, so people that send us a number of complaints to sort of entice them to come to us. And I believe at the moment we're going through a bit of a shortlisting exercise, and so that we have got sort of residents lined up for that. We also want to do, is it 2 or definitely 1 dialogue session with residents? One, yeah. So 1 dialogue session with residents in attendance, where residents get to speak to the bidder. So it's not just going to be reading of documents of those, you know, glossy, beautiful proposals, but it will be actually, you know, looking into the whites of their eyes and saying, you know, what are you going to do for Thurrock and how are you going to go about it? So that's what those beautiful words mean, essentially trying to find people out there, but tapping not to that, because we've got tenant excellence panel, but they are the kind of the tried and tested people. We didn't want to just go with that because we didn't necessarily feel that this is the right representation. So as I say, we went through, you know, TEP as well, but associations, the kind of groups that we know that are involved, and our sort of, you know, regular complainants.
Thank you for that. I absolutely welcome that. I think it's tremendous. I really do. I presume it will be to some degree exempt, that we'll be trusting people to come along, and I can't quite get my head around what information you're going to share with them that well, I presume they're going to pitch. The way I'm sort of seeing is the companies that are bidding will, if you like, will do their showcase pitch of what thing, and the residents will be asked, what do you think of that? And then you'll evaluate the response from the residents. And I'm sure I'm grossly oversimplifying it, but that's there. And it's interesting. I mean, will there be an opportunity for councillors? Because we've talked about it's a cabinet decision, and I get that. I've no problem with that. But it would be quite nice, I think, probably us who've been involved in this for a while, to get some sort of, maybe have the same pitch, and for do we get a say, just to give an opinion of what we think. It's far more important what the residents think, absolutely, and I really think it's brilliant. I don't know whether it's an innovation or whether it's something you've always done, but whatever it is, now I've had it explained to me, I think it's great. But maybe we could nick a little bit of that as well.
I think I'd need to take it away and run by our sort of procurement specialist, because it just goes back to Councillor Lydiard's point, where councillors cannot evaluate per se, and that is seen as part of the evaluation exercise. But I can take that away and respond via the chair.
Councillor Renton.
I'm not sure about that, Evelina, that residents can evaluate but councillors can't. That doesn't sit quite well with me. I'm not too sure. I'll be open to hearing that again, but I think that is something that needs to be looked at, because if residents, how do you know that residents aren't going to go out and say some of that, because they're not bound by the same rules and regulations that we are, you know? So I find that a bit difficult, but you know, I'm willing to bend, you know that occasionally.
I mean, I would only just say that obviously you don't blend it, because effectively the decision is a political decision. So it's politicians' decision. So it's not an officer's decision. Officers recommend, but it remains cabinet decision, therefore political decision. So you can't have politicians choosing and then politicians kind of deciding. But as I say, I'll take that away and get back to you.
I can understand that, and through you, Chair, I can understand that, but I think you've got to be careful what you're putting out to general public too, which could have ramifications that way. You know, you've got to be extra careful. I don't know whether you're going to involve forums in that, and friends of committees that have their own bits within their communities. I don't know whether you're going to go out to them as well, but I just worry that some of that procurement will get out somewhere else. You know, with us, we can't give information out because we're not allowed to do that. But I think that when you're putting something out to the general public, you've got to be careful what goes out there, you know.
I mean, we've been fairly open and transparent in terms of what we're publicising, and obviously, as an example, that attachment to the February Cabinet and February ONS is the full brief to all of the bidders. I mean, technically, the procurement is an open process. Obviously, you will only know about it if you are a certain contractor of a certain scale and you're signed up to, you know, certain procurement sort of portals. But it is an absolute sort of out there in the open. It's an ODU notice, so it goes across the entire sort of European Union and whatnot. So it's meant to be a very public and open, you know, process. Because obviously it is a public money that at the end is going to follow whoever gets the contract.
I do understand where we're coming from, though, on that. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Beth.
Can I add something on these, on both councillors' point? I think, you know, when cabinet will make a decision, so cabinet members or elected members, and they are councillors, no, so obviously they are the one who are making decisions. I think the point maybe the committee is trying to raise is, maybe if this committee can have a session with those potential bidders to share their concerns or suggestions in a way, because they are part of ONS committee. Is that, councillors, something? Obviously, I'm sub, you know, today, but I think that would be something maybe if officers can consider.
Thank you. I have a question myself. Under the picture structure on page 26, does the new structure give financial savings to the housing department?
So, sorry, just for clarity, is that under 3.9? Is it under 3.9 that the officer structure you're referring to? No, that's absolutely fine, thank you. So, yes, at the moment the staffing establishment encompasses 46 officers as it currently sits. Clearly it's a much reduced service offering in terms of officer levels that we're going to have in terms of personnel. As the report alludes to and previous reports have alluded to, there's obviously a large 2P element of this, so council officers will be moving across to the successful provider. So the remaining staff cohort that will be left is seen as quite a senior team there to support, and it really is a sort of change in the way in which we've got contracts now, and the change in which we'll have this contract in the future. This is very much an integrated partnership model that we're looking to achieve. So even though that there will be obviously officers working for and on behalf of Thurrock for ensuring the best interest for the council, you know, the officers that are going to be working within the partnership model under the new provider, the approach we're looking to adopt is very much that you work very much in close partnership, i.e. they are working on the best interests of the council as well, representing you know, the interests of Thurrock and its residents, and that is to try and deliver the efficiencies that we're trying to seek within this model, because we're combining all revenue and capital work streams. We see this as the best approach rather than having duplication on both sides.
So how much would the saving be each year, would you be saving? Yeah, what would the saving be each year on the new structure?
So as Alistair is saying, it's not necessarily, we're looking to derive some saving because obviously we'll have less overhead count, but obviously the rest of the stuff will go across to the contractor under 2P, so there'll be an absolute sort of contribution for that. So we still need people to deliver sort of similar tasks that we've got now with those, you know, 30 plus contractors. So, but it will be just a slightly different work. So it's not necessarily, the savings are not aimed at the sort of officer cuts at all. They're just, you know, aimed at sort of reprogramming, getting efficiencies from the actual management of the stock, which is slightly better, slightly more, you know, joined up. You spend less time on continuous procurement and renewals and approvals on invoices, so things like that. So you get your efficiencies through those sort of things, not necessarily through staff cuts. That's not the aim of this.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, thank you. I will now move to the recommendation. Members are requested to note comments of this report. Is everybody in agreement? Agree.
Can I just say something, Chair?
Councillor Renton.
Yeah, I don't mind noting it as long as our views are going through, you know, to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 8. Cadbite Jones, please present his report on housing revenue.
Thank you, Chair. So this is what I've titled the HRA review report. This was really born out of the conversation we had at the January Overview and Scrutiny Committee, where I brought the rent setting report. So the main request there was really a sort of an expansion on some of the operational costs which are in the report. So I've included those under tables 2 and 3, with a particular focus on the management and strategy elements. But as part of the overall context, I've included some further information into the report as well, so I'll just quickly go through it. So the initial part of the report just really lays out that function of the HRA and some of the core distinctions between the housing revenue account and the and the overall council's general fund, just to give that flavour of what services are specifically chargeable to the HRA, with it being the ring fenced and its tenants' monies which are used on tenant services. I've put a little bit in there about the HRA business plan. HRA business plan's come up, and it was a standalone report which went to council and cabinet as part of the budget setting. So it really just articulates some of the information which is in there and the aim of the HRA business plan. I've included a couple of sort of allocations through pie charts just to really give members an idea of where the expenditure is and where the allocation of the funding goes into the key distinct areas. And the subsequent tables 2, tables 3, tables 4, tables 5 really break down that operational expenditure and the repairs, so you can get a flavour of the actual kind of headlines as to the repairs which are carried out and where the funding is and where it goes. Section 5 is the same with income, so we can kind of see dwelling rents now. We're talking £54.3 million and overall income of about 66. So this is a sizable budget and a sizable element of the overall council's activities. Table 6 and Table 7, that gives us the outlay of the capital programme. This was all included in the rent setting report and the budget, so this is really just for information and clarification. And part 7 through Table 8 and 9 just give that indication of the rents and service charges. Section 9, I brought in some of the information around the right to buy receipts and property acquisitions. So it kind of gives that sort of background and that recap on right to buy receipts and what we've been doing with them and where they've been spent. And table or section 9.2 just really lays out the HRA development which has been undertaken since the right to buy receipt and the retained right to buy strategy came into process, and at the end we've just got the overall position on reserve. So that's a quick kind of introduction of the report, and I'll save the rest of the time for questions.
Do any of the members have any comments or questions? Spain.
Yeah, I've got lots, but I won't ask them all. Couple of things. I notice here we've got sort of maintenance of housing sites in terms, and I'm talking specifically in terms of grounds. I think one of the phrases is down. I'm trying to find it. I was just looking at it. Maintenance of grounds, 129 grand. Is this? And I know the HRA is a pot here, and then we've got the general fund, which is a pot there. One assumes when it comes to things like grass cutting and maintenance work on gardens, beds and whatever, it's all done by the environmental team and there's an internal charge, or do you have your own teams?
It's partly, so there's the SLA recharge for that wider grounds maintenance is the bigger contract. This is really just allows some sort of discretionary funding and elements for that as well. So this would be kind of elements of emergency work or targeted pieces of work as well. So which would fall outside of the main SLA.
Okay. The reason for asking, sorry, Chair, was that okay? The reason for asking was clearly we know that there are going to be substantive reductions in service and general environmental issues, and 13 people losing their jobs, and grass only getting cut every 6 or 7 weeks rather than every 3 or 4 weeks. We know that's going to happen, and it's all been discussed at great length. But I just wondered whether that is, whether there would be any impact here on our own properties and the maintenance of, because it's little things like that that really affect the day-to-day lives of our residents. Think that they're more likely to complain about the fact that as they walk through the grass, they tread in something rather unpleasant because they couldn't see it because the grass was this high. They'll probably get more wound up about things like that than they do about some things that probably are more life-affecting. So I just wanted assurance that we're going to at least keep our properties in a good state of order.
So I'll take that one because it's more about the sort of maintenance and management on the ground. So at the moment, the sort of the recharge to HRA and the service levels to HRA are not necessarily being debated. I know that there will be a setting of new SLA and setting of new standards. So over time, it might change what our residents on housing estates are getting. But at the moment, there is no. It is not being sort of discussed. It's not in scope. As you say, and in terms of the kind of the grounds maintenance, there is a small team carrying out works akin to grounds maintenance. They kind of came over from grounds maintenance way back when, and they're cutting some of the sort of shrubs and doing weeds in some of the alleys on housing estates. So they kind of would fall under that. They also do some of the sort of clearances of when properties become void, clearances of gardens and things like that. So there's an element of grounds maintenance within housing, but a very tiny one comparing to the whole kind of army of there that comes from public realm.
Yeah, thanks for that, Yulin. I mean, it does. I mean, I've had a couple of instances where I've been called out to some of our sheltered complexes where, quite frankly, they're overgrown. And I remember one dear old lady who had walked down the side of the thing, and the rose bush or whatever had grown, and it literally ripped a great cut across her arm where it trailed. So these things are important that we make sure, and I don't want those things not to happen. The disadvantages are people in our sheltered housing and things like that because of the overarching to cut. So if we've got some of it ring fenced, that's good news. Just as a second part, and forgive me because I'm sure this information you've already given to this committee, and I'm that daft I haven't twigged it. Just looking at some of the investment in existing stock, we know about transforming homes as an overarching project. Quite interested here to see there's 12 million quid on tower block refurbishment. And then we've got the entry. I'm trying to frame it. Door entry installation 650, which I presume will also relate to tower blocks, but I may be wrong in that. But just the tower block refurbishment is a figure that really catches the eye. And I remember asking a question previously about fire safety work, and it was probably the same figure was there in front of me, and I didn't ask the question then. But I'm quite interested to see, we're presumably talking here about South Grays, Chadwell and Tilbury, rather than my beloved colleagues' dearly beloved blocks. So, I mean, it's just, it gives a little bit of insight into that £12 million on tower block refurbishment.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'll just take that. So that budget line is actually specifically for the South Grays refurbishment, and that's based on the budget cohort that was put in place a number of years ago now. Actually, I will acknowledge, but just for the conclusion of that project. But that's not sort of demonstrating what will actually be committed underneath that. That's the budget parameters that was agreed. Clearly, members will be aware that that project is facing a number of difficulties, of which we're addressing. Seeking to address, and so we're keeping the budget in place at this current stage until we reach a conclusion on that.
Okay, I've got to tread. Sorry, Chair, I've got to tread on eggshells here because of legal issues that I know are ongoing. But as you say, so in reality, if fingers crossed and everything goes well, we may actually not be spending that money. We may be getting some of that back.
That's absolutely correct.
Councillor Rensell.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring this up, but Neil's mentioned something that I know we've got a service level agreement with doing some of the low-rise blocks of cutting grass and clearing up. I was actually talking to two men who were cleaning up, I won't say where, but and they were actually cleaning dog's mess, food and everything else. Surely, Evelina, we could be sending letters out to low-rise flats where they've been given a nice piece of housing where one block will look after theirs and another block couldn't give a damn what they're doing. And I think these men shouldn't have been clearing up the dog's mess and food that people have thrown out the windows, and it should be down to the people who actually live in the flats. Surely a letter could go out, because we don't need to look after those people are given those pieces of land as to sit out and enjoy, and I think we should perhaps be making them look after, take care, some pride in where they live. So I think some of the service level agreements should be pulled, really. You know, if we're looking at saving, we could be doing it and put the onus back on the people who actually are given the land to enjoy.
I wish I could just leave that duck poo there, but I can't. So we're going to have to do two things, and we really strive to do two things, and I'm sure you know, Peter and Steve are really quite keen on enforcing where enforcement is needed. So in cases like that, absolutely caretakers who do that, they report it back. Or you know, whoever else it is, but it is very common for us to be sending letters out to everyone that we know in the block, because it's very often difficult to actually pinpoint who actually did it. But at the same time, as I say, we absolutely have to clean it, so I'm not going to be leaving it there. I will absolutely be getting people to clear that.
Anybody else like to speak? No? Okay, I'd just like to say a few words. This is a good report and should be updated annually and circulated to new councillors or available from members on induction. But more importantly, to everybody that will sit in on the Housing and Scrutiny Committee in the future. Thank you. Right. I will now move to the recommendations. The committee's comment on the report, which we've already done really, haven't we? So that's okay. Thank you. Item 9, Trivet Avenue report. Can I ask Bruce to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This report advises this committee on the proposed redevelopment of numbers 158 to 228 Trivet Avenue and seeks comments on the redevelopment of the dwellings and the vacation of the dwellings and the making of the appropriate payments to displaced residents. The report identifies the structural defects and repair liabilities of these flats, and it describes the options appraisals that concludes that the demolition of the existing buildings and development of an increased number of homes on the site is the option presenting the greatest value for money. The proposed route for the council is to deliver the scheme itself and to progress this by procuring a main contractor, and seeks comments on the procurement of a contractor to demolish the existing dwellings and to construct the new homes. Just to give a bit of background onto this in this report, in September 2020, the council commissioned Michael Dyson to undertake a survey of these blocks, and the summary of that of those surveys were that the blocks were in a poor condition due to structural defects that arose from the construction of the blocks. The survey also highlighted some works that were planned, and those works would need to be brought forward. After this, from this survey, there were 5 options that were then derived, which are 3.2, and option 5 was the one that was chosen by the council to go forward, which was to demolish the existing 36 units and to rebuild more, that being 48 units, which is highlighted in Appendix B that's been provided in the report. The resultant financial scores for each of the options were highlighted, which is shown in point 3.12 to show how option 5 was then derived to be the best option that provided the best value for money. In terms of the financial appraisal of the redevelopment of the blocks, there are 3 issues that need to be looked at: the repair liability for the existing stock over the next 30 years, the cost of vacating the existing homes through decants of tenants and the buyout of leaseholders, and the financial visibility of the proposed development. With the first point, if we look at 3.25, it's going to cost an indicative fee of 9.6 million to maintain the blocks and to bring them up to good condition. In terms of vacating the properties, there's an indicative budget of 320,000 to vacate, to decant the existing tenants, as there are 32 tenants and there are 4 leaseholders. With that as well, there's an indicative budget of 1 million that's been put forward for leaseholder buybacks, bringing the total to 1.320. That is to vacate all of the 3 blocks. In relation to the development appraisal, which is highlighted at 3.31 and 3.32, you'll be able to see that there's a deficit of 3.365 in relation to the development appraisal. If I can draw your attention as well to 3.38, if we draw together the 3 strands of the overall financial appraisal, which is the repair liability of circa 9.6 million, the cost of vacating the existing homes, which is circa 1.3, and the financial visibility, which is a negative 3.365, we have a total 30-year position of a positive 4.9, which is circa 5 million. From this, we can see that the best option is for us to demolish the existing units and to rebuild. And what we're proposing to do is to rebuild them as 48 homes, which is going to be a mix of 30 homes and 18 flats. What we've decided to do, what the council's decided to do in this is that the flats and the houses have been derived from housing needs, and that's fed into the stock that's going to be built. In relation to further consultation at 3.45, we've had further consultation with the residents, which started off in March 2023, and we had further consultation again in the summer of 2023 prior to a full planning application that was submitted in January of 2024, which was validated on the 1st of February. At 3.47, we can see an indicative program that has been outlined by the team. And I'll leave it at that point and take any questions that might come through.
Thank you. Do members have any comments?
I have one small question, but I just wanted to say that we haven't got those agendas of Blackshots and Tyria, so I can't look at what you're talking to me about. So
They
that
were
doesn't
marked
help.
to follow.
Yeah,
they
we
they
didn't
weren't
get
sent
them.
to you.
No, Councillor Pearce hasn't got anything either.
I think
So I don't know where they were sent or what, but they were.
I
Yeah.
received them and I had to print them out myself.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. It's just that I can't read what I'm relying on what you're saying to me. I just wanted to know that the flats are coming down. How many more are you putting up in that area, other than what you're taking down? Is there more going up? Yeah. How many is that?
Thank you, Councillor. So currently there's 36 flats, and once those 36 flats have been demolished, we will be rebuilding 48 units, which is going to be a mix of 30 houses and 18 apartments. The apartments will be a mix of 1 and 2 beds, and the houses will be a mix of 2, 3, and 4 beds that will be built there. We've also taken into consideration providing wheelchair access units. The homes have been built using a fabric-first approach, and have also been built taking into consideration lifetime home standards, meaning that they can be easily adapted as residents age as well.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Bruce, for your report. And we do have monthly chats online, don't we? We're due another one this month, aren't we? Is that true?
Yes, Councillor, we are.
Can I ask what's the real update now with the decanting, please?
Okay, so where we are right now with the decanting is we currently have a report that's going through to Cabinet, and once we've got that internal approval, also dependent on external approvals as well, as we currently have conversations with HM Treasury in relation to getting funding for building the blocks or the redevelopment. And then once we've got those internal and external approvals, we should be able to then begin the process of decanting.
May I ask another question about the young adults there with young children? If when they move, it will interfere with their education. So will they get moved back, and they can move the schools will be automatically, they can take them, get back to the schools that they originally had in Aveley. I just wondered, could you put me wise to that, please?
Sorry, Keith, would you want to take that one? Sure.
Thanks, Councillor, for the question. So we'll have the same approach that we have at Blackshots. There's been options to return. We'll work closely with the residents. We're at the point when we have the initial conversations around their decant to understand their wishes and aspirations, and also be clear on what their requirements are in terms of alternative accommodation. So it's very normal with projects of this sort that people will move out because it will be considerable time during the construction phase. There's maybe many of them will settle down in those new homes and set roots there, but for, you know, there will be that option to return, but the details of that policy, exactly how that is dealt with, will be explained in detail to the residents.
Councillor Spain.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First and foremost, I must preface what I'm going to say by, I think this is a brilliant project. I think it's exactly what we should be doing long term, and we should be looking over the next few decades to replicate what we're doing with our substandard properties by doing exactly this. So I commend everybody who's come up with this plan. My concerns, and I suspect that my questions are more aimed at Mike than anybody else. You know, my fear is here, given we've got black shots, given we've got the financial situation that we're in, given we've got all the other stuff that's going on at the council, I suppose to summarise my fear is, are we biting off more than we can chew with this project at this point in time? I'm really concerned about that. And you know, we're already talking about putting money on one side, establishing a fund of £1 million for leasehold buyout and things like that. So we're taking some money out. So I admitted it's all within HRA, but we're taking some money and putting it there to do that. And then I look at the risk rating on the projects, and we can't even, bear in mind, you know, we are the planning authority. We can't even say it's a low risk, whether it will get planning permission for or not. It's down as a medium risk. That scares the living daylights out of them. If we can't put together our own planning application and have the comfort and belief that we're putting forward an exemplary planning application that will get through our own planning committee, heaven help us. It seems to me to show a great lack of faith that we're only rating it, so we're rating it as medium. We should be saying we're going to produce a really good planning application, so the risk of it not getting through would be low. So that's one thing that concerns me there. We then move on to the money side of this project, where we're taking a bit of a punt on the borrowing rates from the Public Works Loan Board, and that's down as a medium risk. And then we're talking about this is the catch-all question, the government permission to borrow not being achieved. Now, we're already going to the government on some schemes. We're already going to the government on black shots. We're going to, you know, whatever. It just really concerns me that at this point in time, and I go back to that phrase, too much to chew, is it, you know, do we really need, I know we've already started it and whatever, we've got a reputation for starting infrastructure projects in this borough and not being able to finish them, and it worries me. So I suppose directing my question, this is a really unfair, Mike, and I apologise, but, you know, are you really confident about the financial risks that we run through this project?
So I think in terms of the financial appraisal of this, it comes down to a couple of things really. If this, so as part of the ongoing maintenance the council would have to do on the properties to maintain them, as Bruce said, it becomes uneconomical. It's the same with black shots. It effectively will cost you over that period more to maintain properties than it would be to demolish them. So I suppose the initial part of that is these properties wouldn't have to be demolished because they're just not sustainable to do it. But as part of that ongoing analysis, and this brings in the 30-year business plan, and this is where the 30-year business plan really sort of comes into its own. So the borrowing associated with it as laid out in the options is part of that 30-year plan. That 30-year plan really tests the viability of the council. Obviously it's a 30-year period, so there's things within that. But on the best information we've got at the moment, the project for this and black shots can both be contained in the 30-year business plan and both remain financial viability. The issue around interest rates, that, as we know, I mean, for some element that you know, when this was originally looked at, they were at the highest borrowing rates that we've seen for many years. So we've got external treasury advisors now with Link, who give us forecasts on interest rates and PWLB rates over a series of time. So in terms of the initial financing, we could look at this over an initial period and short term 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 years. Probably be advisable to do that and take a sort of a more rounded view. You wouldn't really want to lock in a borrowing rate at the moment because it's probably at its higher. But that's part of our treasury management conversations, and it's the same with the general fund as well. You know, the longer term borrowing profile of the council's debt, once we get things settled and ascertained, we will do it. So in terms of that risk, again, it would come into the 30-year business plan. I mean, we would consider that if it was 3, 2.5%, 4%, that would all be sensed as the viability of the 30-year HRA plan. So we would assess that annually, and as I say, we would make those treasury decisions based on long-term borrowing. But at the moment, everything which is in the plan, this is part of all of those long-term considerations.
And if I just may add, in terms of the sort of the capacity to deliver, leaving outside finances, more thinking about personnel and resources. So I think two things spring to mind. First of all, under Keith, the team, you know, have actually been delivering and completing things on site. Obviously, the scheme that Councillor Retzel refers to was absolutely delivered by us. Lowen Road was completed just, probably 6 months ago now. Beaconsfield, and I know it wasn't without its issues, but it's been sort of delivered by us. So I think the team have proven that they can absolutely be delivering new built schemes on site. And I think my second point is that both in this and in Blackshots, we are absolutely seeing the need to be expanding those resources. So we're looking to absolutely buy in sort of professional advice. So you will hear shortly from Ishtip, who is absolutely the sort of one of the advisors that we're bringing on site, representing companies that we're bringing on site to deliver that. So it's not going to be just done by us with what we know. We're absolutely going for services out there, professional services to support us to deliver that.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you, Mark. I mean, I'm sure you wake up in the middle of the night staring at the ceiling over any number of things, and this is probably one of them. I thank you, and I'm really pleased because you know we've shot ourselves in the foot on a number of infrastructure projects where we've had the profile. This is a great idea. Let's build this. Let's do that. Bang, bang, bang. Bish, bosh, bash. This is fantastic. Aren't we great? Bang, bang. And nobody actually comes and talks to the accountants and says, how are we going to pay for it all? So if you can give me the comfort which you've just given me, that you are as confident as you can be, considering all the things that you think might happen, then that gives me the comfort that I was asking for. So thank you.
Keith, I'd like to speak.
Thank you. If we can just address Councillor Spate's comment around the risk register, it probably just helpful to explain, and I'll take responsibility for it not being more detailed in the report in the table. But the risk rating element that you're looking at is actually it's a combination of the impact of something not happening or something happening and the likelihood of it happening. So when we spoke about the planning thing, the planning application, so it's, you know, the impact of not getting planning would be very significant. The likelihood of it happening may be something different, but that's for another committee to decide. So I just wanted to explain that's why it's sort of settled at the medium. It's not a reflection of us not thinking we won't get a good planning application or that it won't get considered appropriately. Thank you.
If it's got planning in it, everybody's concerned if it's got planning in it at this moment in time, but thank you.
Any more questions from members? Councillor Bass.
Yeah, thank you for the report. No, I'm not against this development, but I'm slightly concerned, because some of the members who does not have this report, and I think because obviously you have, if I heard correctly, you submitted this application for planning permissions, so there was no reason for not sending these reports earlier, because if you look at even the comment section of recommendations, these are like around 8-9 comments, where we have to comment, and members, if members does not even have these papers in front of them, and we are making decisions on millions of pounds, and we already know we are in financial crisis and the things which have happened in the past, and then expecting something from members, just look at certain papers in few seconds and make a decision. I think that's, to me, that's very unreasonable and unacceptable.
So I'm looking at democratic services because I think, so we've published it as to follow, and the reports were literally available 24 hours later. The reason why they didn't go out straight away is we've been awaiting sort of internal sign-offs and commissioner sign-offs, so we couldn't sort of get them to you in the sort of in the timely sort of prescription for publication of those reports, but they were there sort of 24 hours later. This committee is not asked to make any decisions. The decision lies with Cabinet, so this is absolutely not the kind of decision-making point. And lastly, planning permission has not been submitted as yet on those on Teviot. Okay, it has on Teviot. Sorry about that. Excuse me on that. But it is all really depending on the sort of whether we can actually borrow the money and invest in it. So it's conditional upon that. So yeah, I'll say that.
Any more questions still? No? I will now move to the recommendations. Committee is asked to comment on the following. 1.1, proposed site area for redevelopment of numbers 158 to 228 Evans Trivet Avenue. Members in agreement?
We have agreed to extent of commenting, and I think the other members, they have commented and we have raised our concerns.
Thank you. Agree. 1.2, commencement of decanting residents from the properties and the treatment of the residents in line with the council allocation policy.
Sorry, Chair, and I think Councillor Abbas is making a very good point here, and it has been made at other committees, and before we read through this, and it stems to some degree what we spoke about earlier on. I think we've all commented on every aspect, I mean, that are here and it's recorded, and I've asked for this time and time again, we read them through and then we vote on it. But I do think we need to reflect in future on how we word these things, because, yeah, I mean, it's quite simple. Committee is asked to comment on the following. Well, we've all commented. Yeah. So we've now got a recommendation, and I go back to what I said earlier on. It doesn't really make sense because we're doing something retrospectively. Yeah, so whether we just want to do it en masse, en bloc, and say councillors have commented on all the issues from 1.1 to 1.9 and had the opportunity to ask questions, and we're satisfied we've been given an opportunity to discuss it, then that can be noted to Cabinet.
Yeah. I agree with that, actually. So we'll vote on block. Yeah.
Can I just give you some advice? We have been advised, and as part of the BVI reports, that recommendations haven't been clear. I do accept it's probably not the best wording, and it probably doesn't take much effect, but I would ask you if you could read through the recommendations, just in case somebody does have anything to say. But going forward, I think the officers are here and they're listening about what you say about recommendations, and there has been wide criticism of to note and to comments reports. So
I think partly
but can I just
members have not had the paperwork in front of them also, which is quite a big thing, and we need to get that right in future.
Yeah, I think we're not doing the officer justice because we haven't all got printing machines at home to do it. And I'm seeing things tonight for Blackshots I haven't seen before.
I'm sorry, I'm not the clerk for this committee, so I obviously things have gone out late, but I don't know.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we're not doing the officer justice because we haven't seen the things. We're just going on hearsay and what the officer's telling us. We've got to go by that. So I find that very hard to do at some respects. It's just I don't like noting things at all, but just having that put down.
But Chair, can I just clarify something? This is not to note, this is to comment. Yeah, just for clarification. So we are commenting, and I think we have commented, we have asked questions. I think the only recommendation is, have we commented? So the answer is yes. So we cannot say agree or disagree, because these are just comments. Unless you change this recommendation wording.
I think the idea is that you've commented on 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 individually. Yes, yeah, and I think that was one of the as Rhiannon said, that was one of the recommendations from the BVI, and in terms of governance, so that would be our recommendation.
As someone who has spoken many times, and at full council as well, I absolutely agree with officers, and I apologise for maybe trying to miss that. I absolutely agree that in this instance now, Chair reads them out and we say what word. I mean, I would have changed maybe the recommendation. We somehow changed the wording, but done. But you know, you're absolutely right. BVI is absolutely categoric. We need to and I've castigated chairmen of other committees for not doing it, including our beloved mayor. So it would be only right and proper that I couldn't just say now, oh, we're not going to do it here because it's whatever. So I think all the points taken. And just to try and explain, I think one of the interesting things is. And I'm as guilty of. I mean, I tend to do all mine electronically, and I'm not quite sure when this came up. But one of the benefits is, for example, when you look at, and it's a question I didn't ask because time is moving on, but you've got the proposed site area for the redevelopment numbers 158 to 228, and there is a map as an appendix. And it's really interesting when you look at that map, because the question that sprang to my mind was, how's this all going to affect all the other properties around it that are clearly shown on that map? But we could keep making questions forever and ever, so I didn't ask it. But that's part of the reason why we want them in advance.
I agree. Thank you. I'll carry on reading through. So
1.3, I think we're right.
So it's 1.3, payment of home loans, disbursement payments is appropriate. Agreed? Agreed.
Yeah, we comment on it.
Yeah. 1.4, commencement of negotiations with leaseholders for repurchase of properties and completing purchases with such actions delegated to the Executive Director of Adults Housing and Social Care in consultation with the Chief Financial Officer and portfolio holder for finance, human resources and payroll, and the portfolio holder for children's services and housing. Agreed?
Yeah, we commented on it.
Commented. 1.5, subject to cabinet approval, the use of compulsory purchase powers under the Town and Country Planning Laws 1990, should this become necessary. Commented?
Commented.
1.6, service of the demolition notice under section 138B and Schedule 5A of the Housing Act 1985 that will confirm the council intention to demolish the buildings and suspend the obligation on the council to complete right to buy applications on the dwellings within the agreed site boundary. Commented?
Commented.
1.7, negotiation and settlement of the statutory completion claims made by residents as a result of the service of initial demolition notice, which such actions delegated in paragraph 1.4 above. Commented? Yes. 1.8, establishment of the budget of 1 million to meet the costs of the purchase of leasehold interest. Commented. 1.9, subject to the government agreement to borrowing, the launch of the procurement process to obtain a main contractor for detailed design and construction and delegation of the authority to the corporate director of adults housing and health in consultation with the leader of the cabinet member of Children's Housing Services and Housing Commissioner in section 151 officer. The decision is made and necessary contracts is awarded. Commented?
Commented.
Oh, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
But Chair, can I just say something for our democratic services? You know? Can I just say something, just a point, not on this, but on general? You know, obviously, I understand we do mention BVI, but BVI is not about just reading certain things, just for the sake of, because we have to read. It's about like, making sure what we are reading, making sure the understanding of this, making sure the proper scrutiny of these things, and well-informed information in front of our members. So obviously, BV is not about just reading certain contents, but obviously we can see from this meeting, certain members that does not have this information in hand with them. So there's no point even mentioning this BVI, because if you don't have this advanced information in front of you, then how can you make even decisions? How can you even comment on something which you don't even have, because there are like dozens of pages, there is maps, there are 3, because I can see this on my mobile phone, because I know agenda is published online and it's more easier, but some members is different. So how can I read or comment or say something which is worth like, say 9.6 million or 1.3 million, there is cost involved, and then I think it's just useless exercise, to be honest. It's just a comment.
Agreed. I mean, I only got this paperwork myself when I came into the council yesterday, so it's, I agree with that. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Sorry, just given the time, and we've probably got quite a bit to say about black shots, I imagine. We're likely to, and in case we forget to say it, if we want to go beyond 9:30, we need under 17.1, Chapter 5 of the Constitution, just to make note that we need to go beyond, and in case we forget, not to do it. So if you want to take that now, Chair, I might suggest.
I would like to move the motion without notice to suspend the council procedure rule 1.11.1 to allow the meeting to continue beyond the 2.5 hour limit. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you.
I'll leave the room now.
Item 10, Blackshots redevelopment business case. Can I ask Julian Wayne to present the item?
Always forget that. The first to say, actually, as he's just reminded me, I do have Ishti Bauer with me from Avis and Young. If you have specific questions on the business case which they produce for you, then he's only too willing to answer them. And the second thing, which is not unrelated to that, and I do say this with some temerity given the problems with paperwork tonight, but the full financial report is in the private portion of the agenda, and therefore obviously you would have to go, if there are questions we can't handle in the public portion, you would have to go into private session for that. The other thing then probably just to say is, in light of the expressed discontent with the papers, I'll probably spend a little more time than I would normally have done on the report, and hopefully that will enable members to get a better picture. Like with the Teviot report, Chair, this is destined for Cabinet. I think I'm right in saying that's next week, and it will update Cabinet and obviously make recommendations to them, and it does the same for you in terms of updating you and asking you to comment on the development of the business case for the redevelopment of the Blackshots tower blocks. And the conclusion, and I'll work you through how we get to that conclusion, is that based on the current assumptions, a scheme delivered by the Council for 100% affordable housing is viable and will deliver 258 units. And we propose that the Council should deliver this scheme itself and to progress this by procuring a main contractor to obtain planning permission and in due course to construct the homes. I'll also comment a little later on the updates on decanting and the tennis courts and fields in trust. I'll return to the recommendations, if I may, at the end. I don't think I need to rehearse the introduction and background very well. I think everybody in this room is aware of the blocks and of the problems with them, and that in many respects this is slightly ahead of the Teviot report, because in March 23, of course, Cabinet approved the site area and approved the start of decanting residents and the various payments, and it also commissioned the business case to which we were referring. So after that, the Council got tenders for consultancy services to do the design and development of the business case. Avis and Young are the lead partner in partnership with architects called Levitt Bernstein, and you'll also be aware that we appointed on your behalf an independent tenant advisor, Newman Francis, to act as the advocate for the tenants and residents and to liaise between them and the council. The process to develop the business case is fallen into a number of work streams. The design took the initial designs prepared originally by Savills in the original feasibility work, and these were used following review to form the basis of the master plan principles and working on the two sites at Blackshots as a integrated development. And they were narrowed down to a preferred option that was consulted upon with residents at the final engagement meeting in October, and the plans that are on the Appendix 2 are based on that option and that consultation. Levitt Bernstein and council officers have also carried out pre-application planning discussions with the councillor's planning authority. There's been positive feedback on the design, and for the most part these will be dealt with through the new normal planning process. There is a specific hurdle still to be overcome in planning in terms of the use of the land within the Greenbelt, and there is a suggestion there in 3.9 of the various steps that will be taken in making that case, and this part of the council, your development arm if you like, is confident that that case will be made, but in terms of risks as to what happens, that remains a challenge and one that will contribute to the risk assessment. I'm sure somebody's going to ask me, but it is set out. The current design has 258 homes, 78 on the north site, 180 on the south site, and this is 25 houses, 10 bungalows, 217 flats and 6 masonettes. And that's replacing, and I always forget, so I'm going to double check, but that's replacing 168, of which 156 are affordable homes at the moment. Yeah, indeed you could. But it would have been rude of me to look at you. I've touched on the engagement piece, but there was a programme of 4 engagement events with residents and stakeholders. A total of 172 residents attended. There was further comments online, and the views on the blocks and the issues about the environment, mitigating the development on open space, increasing quality of available play space, addressing antisocial behaviour concerns. They're all set out in the main report as well. In terms of how to deliver this, Avis and Young colleagues looked at 4 options. They looked at straightforward disposal, but quite frankly, you wouldn't get your affordable housing, very limited ability to achieve control, and you wouldn't gain any either capital receipts or long-term revenue benefits. The development agreement approach, usually a partnership with a development partner, usually with a defined land receipt. Again, because of the amount of affordable housing required, limited opportunity for market sale, this precluded it being a worthwhile route, and this also really rules out the joint venture route, which of course in most instances is used at rather larger numbers of properties than this in any event. So that's how we get to the council self-delivery route. Yes, it does mean that you bear a more financial risk in the sense of you've got to pay for it all, and you've got to hold that in the housing revenue account while you do it, but it also gives you control, and it will ensure that you get the affordable housing for residents that you need and that you would otherwise have struggled to get through the other routes. There are a number of ways in which you can develop planning and which you can take this on, but the recommendation here to you is that you will procure a main contractor, and that main contractor will then be responsible for the development of the planning permission. And it is important to say, of course, that although much work has gone into the design that we've got to at this stage, and it has been developed, you know, it's at stage 2 of the architect's developments, and there will be some considerable development of it before we get to actually shovels in the ground and bricks coming out of them. So there will be change to that, and the main contractor will be responsible for that. Getting the main contractor to do it gives you confidence that it will be buildable. It also gives you the opportunity to reduce costs through value engineering and making sure that the construction supply chain is attuned to delivering what you really want them to do. So again, after careful consideration, that's the recommendation before you. And there is there's 2 indicative timetables in the report for the way we might procure this. And at the moment, the council is examining framework procurement. What that is people have pre-tendered frameworks of contractors, and you can go to those pre-tendered frameworks and run a smaller competition through a more limited number of contractors. And it will give you a slightly quicker process. And part of the reason for that is to enable the hopeful award of brownfield remediation land grant, which will help with the finances for this project. And the importance of the timetable is that if you are successful in that bid, there's a need to get into contract with the developer sooner rather than later. There's a section in the report on council resources and governance. I don't think I need to add very much to what Evelyn has said about that, but clearly you do need to have your own resources backed up with the consultants, and that's why there's a budget in your recommendation and an approval to procure those also. Turning perhaps then to the critical, well, it's all critical, but to the nub of the financial piece. The recommendation before you is to use a housing revenue account to fund it through borrowing, and the assumption, based on the current assumptions, what we are saying to you here is that rather better than the Teviot scheme, that this scheme not only is viable, but actually is making a substantial surplus over the life of the project, and so that for the housing revenue account, this is good news. Now, as with the Teviot scheme, Avis and Young have had to make a number of assumptions. They've worked on those in accordance with Michael and his colleagues, and of course, yes, somebody will say, well, how do you know that those assumptions will be right, Julian? And the answer, of course, is that we don't know for certain, and that's why they've carried out modelling and sensitivity. And it is true, if you were to say that they all came at once, that we might struggle. But based on all the sensitivities the Dish Deep has modelled, we can still demonstrate that this project is in surplus throughout the life. And in actual fact, based on current assumptions, it never goes into deficit on your housing revenue account as well, which is a positive thing to say. And the report talks about the rent levels, which are assumed at local housing allowance rates. It also talks about the volatility of build costs. And as we've talked earlier, in the context of Teviot, it talks about interest rates. A wise man once said the only certainty about the numbers is that they'll be wrong. But quite frankly, colleagues have tested these to destruction, and we are as good as we're going to get here at this point in time. We can certainly answer more questions about the finances and the assumptions. We did look also at a mixed tenure approach with the housing revenue account, with the council developing market sale properties as well as the affordable housing. That immediately starts to raise you complications, because you'll have to do some of that through the general fund, which immediately means that the debt has to be paid back in a way that it doesn't in the housing revenue account, and it starts at this point in time to look a less valuable situation, a less viable and a less attractive proposition. Avis and Young's recommendation is that we keep monitoring that between now and the time of build completion. I said I'd talk briefly about the progress on clearance. The report says that there were 42 flats emptied. As of today, I believe that's 43. It is broadly on target with the completion of the clearance, although I think it's true to say that both with Blackshots and with Teviot, this will be a challenging target to do it in the next 12 months. And there are diagrams that show potential replacement land for fields in trust and potential relocation of tennis courts. But both of those would require further work and further discussions with local members and local residents. I said I'd just come back to the top of the report and just talk a little bit about the recommendations. I was itching to make comment during the last report, but you don't actually have me here for advice on local government procedure, despite my grey hair and ageing years. But I would say that, of course, it is perfectly acceptable for you to make a recommendation to Cabinet. If you have an issue with regard to the recommendations before, it is perfectly legitimate for you to comment on that in more detail than we have commented. So if you do have anything you want to say, then you should feel free to do so. The recommendations, which I won't read out in full because you're going to do that, but it's about the design going into the next stage of procurement, taking forward the business case following the self-delivery approach, the HRA borrowing, procurement for the main contractor, and procurement of the advisors to supplement the council's team. There are two notes, and the reason for that, and I mean Mike can comment if he wishes to kick me under the table, but in essence, the budget for the projected cost of the works, you're asked to note that because it is a budget figure and it isn't necessarily the right figure, as I say, and of course within the Housing Revenue Account General Reserve, finance colleagues are able to support the provision of the advisors, so there is no decision there. That's the identification of a budget. I've probably taken longer than I intended, even though I was going to give you more detail than because of the paperwork, but you're asked to comment on little 1 to 17. As I say, it is destined for Cabinet, and either myself or Ishdeep or other colleagues will happily take questions and comments.
Thank you, Julian. Do members have any comments or questions? Councillor Bass.
Thank you for your report. Obviously, this is brilliant initiative. Even though it's not my ward, but still I receive a lot of complaints, from different residents, and I commend the work, the way this has been raised, multiple times by local councillors. I recently visited this, so obviously this need to be demolished and rebuilt. So, on this business plan, page 20, can you please explain this bit more diagrams? Because if the debt is 60% from bank, and then obviously we have return interest plus principal, and then partners will get 50% profit with 20% equity cash, and then council will be giving land plus cash if required, 20% equity. Because if we are getting all these 60% debt from bank, then why are we paying partners 50%?
Is the consideration in the business case of the joint venture model. And in essence, that works on a 50-50 basis. The council and the partner would put in traditionally land and cash, and then the rest of the development will be done through borrowing, and in some instances the council would take part in that borrowing. But that's the joint venture model that I referred to, and because of the size of this development and because of the limited amount of market housing, Avis and Young's colleagues have rejected that option. So that was illustrative of how it would work to show you whether it could work, and the conclusion was that it couldn't. Did you
Councillor Spain.
I think Councillor Abbas and I are thinking somewhere along the same lines. You will remember early in the evening, Councillor Johnson made reference to being visionary and talking to other people and looking at development in the round rather than, you know, in terms of we having a meeting with potential partners and whatever. And I do respect Ishtiq's experience and knowledge coming in. I just have a fear that we have not given enough intent, or intent's the wrong word, enough thought about how this could work as a joint venture. It's interesting, you know, the self-delivery route will carry a relatively higher risk. So again, I'm coming back to things that I spoke about earlier on. Risk. Everything we do is a risk, and you know, but we've not been very good at managing risk to date. Hopefully, we're going to get a lot better. I really feel we should be taking this development as part of a greater ambition, and we should be looking and talking to partners, potential partners, potential stakeholders, and I think and I'm not an expert, so I bow in some respects to that, but I really would have liked to have seen a much stronger comparative reasoning about joint venture. To me, joint venture is the way forward for Thurrock, and it can only be the way forward really for Thurrock given our financial plight. So why are we suddenly striking out on our own on this one when expert analysis would seem to me that going forward to meet, I mean, this is only this is a small number of houses. We've got a huge housing need in Thurrock. The volume of houses that we need to build, we cannot do as a council. It's just impossible for it to happen. We have to bring in joint venture partners. So it concerns me that we're doing this. And I'll be critical of the administration. This administration has spent a great deal of time knocking down the organisation that we had in place. We had two companies, one to look at management, one to look at building them. Then this cabinet and the ruling administration decided they didn't want that. And they got rid of whatever it was called, Thurrock Land Regeneration, or it might still exist as an incorporated company, but effectively it's a paper company now. So I don't understand why, having done that, we then decide we're going to do this on our own, other than because of the political urgency of wanting to do it. Well, political urgency has got us into the mess that we're in as a council. And to me, we've dismissed far too readily the opportunity that joint venture brings on this. I really do think so, and it could be the start of something special, and instead we're taking expert advice, I get that, but the cabinet, when they look at this, are going to, I imagine, say, no, we're going to go down this road, which is contrary to everything that they've said over the last 10 years of this administration. That's the cabinet has said, we don't want to be building houses. It's somebody else's level of expertise. We shouldn't be doing it. And yet, bish bash bosh, they want to build houses on this one. And I don't understand why there's a differential. So I'd welcome some comments on those thoughts.
So if I have first go, and I'm not going to comment on it, obviously, on anything that the cabinet may have said in the past or on other schemes with which I may be less aware. What I will do is I'll give you some comments on the joint venture as it relates to here, and related to another piece of work that I did for Evelina and Keith about housing delivery in Thurrock generally. So I mean, I think the first thing to say is that, and then we'll bring Ashdeep in. I think the first thing to say is that it remains the case that, generally speaking, joint ventures, particularly those of a 50-50 nature that we've talked about, are done at unit sizes of around about 500 or thereabouts, and that although they are sometimes done smaller, the market, generally speaking, is less interested the smaller they get. It is true that you can have other forms of joint venture whereby you might just put your land in and somebody else might do all the rest. And you can have joint ventures with housing associations, for example. But all of those, in this instance, tend to fall away on the basis that you've got 280 units, of which a minimum of 158 have got to be affordable. And therefore the opportunity for a market sale in there for the private sector developer is very limited, and the opportunity therefore for that joint venture partner to make a profit or a return becomes still more limited. And if you look in the business case, you'll see that Ishtiib's colleagues have calculated that the market sale scheme is totally in deficit. So the short answer is, in this scheme, in this instance, it doesn't wash its face, and that would be irrespective of how you try to structure a joint venture. The housing association approach is something I think that Thurrock should be trying to work with and achieve. Depending on how you did this, you might be able to interest housing associations in it. Their grant rates are challenged at the moment, and they, like everybody else, have suffered from the interest rates position. But you also have to remember that at both Blackshots and at Teviot, the issue of people having the option to return and wishing to return to council housing remains important as well. So I think that's a number of reasons, and I will shut up and let Ishtiib speak because he's come. But just before I do that, the other thing I was just going to go on is one of the reasons I came to help you again in the first instance was to look at housing delivery strategies. And of course, one of the problems you've got here is that your market values, by comparison to the cost of building, are challenged. The days when you had significant market values compared to a lower cost of building have been gone for some time and are not back yet. And that means that all such developments are really quite difficult. And yes, you're going to say to me, but there are private sector builders building in Thurrock, Julian, and you'd be right. But they aren't building 150 affordable homes out of 250. So it all keeps coming round to that circular issue. So, I mean, both Ishtiib and myself, quite frankly, are big fans of the joint venture model, but neither of us would believe that we could recommend it to you here.
Councillor Spain.
Just before Ishtiib comes in, and I welcome what you say, and I think it's really interesting. See, I'd just be slightly revolutionary in the thought process, if I may. You know, we've got this decant that's ongoing at the moment. We're moving people out of those properties, and let's just say we've got two sites here. So let's just look at Keir Hardy at the top end on its own. So, and forgive me for not knowing the numbers of flats that actually involves, but we've got a situation where the council is looking to sell a plot of land just across the way, where we're looking to build 58, or we're looking to give planning permission to ourselves to build 58 houses that we've got no interest in building, and we're going to sell it to the commercial sector. I think it more or less will equate to what Keir Hardy is. And I just think, okay, that would then give, if we built that, that would give somewhere for the people to decant to go in the interim. We control that destiny. That gives us a huge amount more flexibility at Blackshots, because we only have to then take the two out of the other two houses and put them into new housing, which opens the door to potential commercial. Now, there's a huge amount of ifs and buts and maybes in that thought process, but I just get the feeling that we and I may be being really, really unfair to yourself and Ishtiib, but whether we've explored every possible opportunity to make better decisions about Blackshots than we've made.
So, I mean, I believe we have used every opportunity to make better decisions about Blackshots in the context in which we operate at the moment. I am anxious that as he's here, he gets the opportunity to speak. But I think I'd just leave you with one further point, which is that there might well be many situations in which we would be saying to you, yes, you could do a much larger scale joint venture, and you could include, because I suspect you're talking about Darnley Road, you could include Darnley Road and some of the others. But I think, partly for the reasons which I said in my earlier remarks about the funding and the viability, and partly because of Thurrock's current circumstances, I don't think that either the market interest or in terms of the levels of risk, we could advise that at the moment. And when I say the levels of risk in this context, although, as I said earlier, you're taking construction risk in delivering it yourself, you shouldn't assume that a joint venture is risk-free, because, of course, you're then exposing yourself to market risk and all those things.
Thank you, Julian. As always, very comprehensive and leaves me with very little to say to add. I mean, just to expand slightly, I guess. So, in terms of the affordable housing provision, Julian's obviously said you've got the 158 odd units to re-provide, but actually in a market-led scheme, you would have the re-provision plus any planning policy additional affordable housing as well. So that shrinks it further. So even out of the additional 90 that we've got, you would still have to provide another 35% of affordable housing in Thurrock in terms of policy compliant. So in terms of the scale of market housing, that shrinks it further. The market-led scheme, again, Julian's alluded to, cost versus value is very constrained in the current marketplace. Does not allow for the amount of affordable housing to be delivered and for the market scale, as market for sales units to make a profit. Cost of finance is prohibitive as well. And I think through the HRA business model, given the council is able to take a much longer term 30-year time horizon in terms of viability, that certainly does support the delivery, self-delivery route for the council in this sphere. 100% agree with what Julian said in terms of the scale of the opportunity individually for Black Shots for a joint venture. It does not usually go for a scale. 500 is a typical. We have seen smaller, say 300 units, but that usually ends up being more of a contractual joint venture, which is more akin to a development agreement rather than a corporate joint venture. And that's mainly because of the overheads of actually setting up a corporate entity, managing that corporate entity. The scale of opportunity just needs to be significantly larger. And I guess the other thing is obviously that's the financial side that we're considering. We've looked at the other softer qualitative side of things as well in terms of what the council's objectives are with Black Shots. I fully appreciate what you said, Councillor, around not making decisions because of haste and timescales, but obviously the Black Shots estate does need to come down, tenants need to be rehoused, new housing needs to be re-provided. So when we look at that, we're looking at speed of delivery, which models can expedite the most, and that's not saying rushing into something, but in terms of which model will be able to deliver something at the best pace for the council. Self-delivery model certainly works best from that perspective. Strategic control over the redevelopment has been a very we've been through discussions and workshops with the council. Strategic control has been something really important for the council in terms of what the look and the feel of the new development will be. Higher quality public realm, high quality housing, and really kind of setting the standard where possible within the realms of viability. So that's really come forward as a strong point. And again, Julian's alluded to governance and market interest in terms of your current financial situation, and would a private sector developer have the confidence to partner with the council in your current situation. It's not to say they might not be, there probably would be someone, but would you get the breadth of the market to be making an interest, showing a competitive process, getting the best value for money for the council through a joint venture programme? That is debatable, certainly, and again, we think the council through a main contractor route, there's much more interest in terms of that, and you can drive costs down through that process. So I think there's a whole raft of reasons why in this instance, when you look at Black Shots in isolation, the joint venture approach is not something that we are recommending. I absolutely agree with what you've said. A different approach to housing might be appropriate more broadly, where different sites could be brought into a multi-portfolio joint venture. That's absolutely sound, but purely in the context of Black Shots in isolation, we don't think that's appropriate.
Okay, Councillor Rinsell.
Sat here really this long. I know I'm the instigator of a lot of this, but I've seen documents tonight I haven't seen before. So I'm really not happy because there's things in these documents I really didn't know they existed, and I've seen figures that I just don't understand. Whether we can, I've not got any problems with the north site, because I think there's enough room around there to do the north site. But I really, going back to what Neil said, I don't think we have looked at this widely enough, because as Keith and I, or Julian, we went out and had a look at the site, offering me another bit of farmer's field as a green belt, and then you want to take green belt that's already Blackshot's playing field that was given to the people of Thurrock. It wasn't given to Blackshots, it was given to the people of Thurrock. And on this plan here, that little piece by the tennis courts is not in the red line. So there is a petition being done at the moment, which will be coming with a few hundred signatures on it. And I don't think we've looked out far enough. I know I've spoken to Julian many times and Keith about the land we've got around. If you're offering a piece of green belt for playing field, why aren't you building on that as green belt? Because it would be near the Keir Hardy site. So I can't. That doesn't equate to me. And I've said this to you when we was out. You're asking me as a councillor to give one little green belt round for another little bit of green belt that isn't green belt in a way. So, and I don't think my residents would be too happy if I said, yes, okay, go ahead with it, because that's not how democracy works. The green belt you want to take on Blackshot's field is, I'm being told, had houses on it years ago. Well, it didn't. It had, after the Second World War, it had a little building on it for cricket. That's all it had on it. Back further was prefabs down the back end of the south site. So on that little bit of green belt, there has never been houses built. I don't think we've looked at the wider picture of where the construction traffic will go, because there's only Laird Avenue. There is nowhere else. It is a dead end. Round Springfield Road, it's a dead end. You know my views. We need to get the council yard that's there is not used. It's just a glorified car park during the day. That is a site we could have used. But obviously I'll take this to Cabinet and I'll take it wherever I've got to take it, because I've got to argue the point that why give up one bit of green belt when you want to give me another bit of green belt, when we've already got that there, which was given. Fields in Trust have no say on that field. They're only consultees to be asked if they're happy with what is happening on that field. They are consultees only. We seem to put a lot of onus on Fields in Trust when they're only consultees. And to give up that little bit of green belt, which backs on to other houses, which I'm not happy with 5 and 6 story flats. I'm not taking 12 down to stick 6 up. You know, that doesn't make any sense, putting people back in boxes when I'm taking them out of boxes. I don't mind 4 with balconies or something like that. I don't know if you're going to get another 100 houses on that site. I don't think you will, because I don't think highways will be in agreement with that, because there is only Broadview to get out of, and that's only a small, tiny road which can only get one car up. So I don't think highways would actually agree with that. There is only one way out, and that's back out into Laird Avenue and back onto Blackshots Lane. So I've got to argue that point, Julian, because I think that to tell me that I can have another bit of land as green belt, and to give up a green belt that was given by King George for Thurrock people to play sport on, and where a bit of green belt can be given back to me where nobody can see it. And I'm sure they're not going to let their children go on a piece of land which doesn't even overlook anything. It's just near the main road, and I don't think we've obviously looked at this. I mean, I've asked Evelina for another meeting, which I really sincerely want, because there are things on here that I haven't seen before. This Avison and Young thing, I haven't seen it before. And I'm really cross about that because I need to have all my facts in front of me before I go to Cabinet. And whether you will get another 100 houses, I don't think. The people you've brought in to give people talks on said, on part of it, Councillor Maney brought up on some of those sites on the south side have got no parking in their homes. And he said to me, I said, where are these people going to park? And he said, on the road. And I said, well, have you seen Laird Avenue, Jesmond Road and Springfield? It's full of cars. At the moment, you're not going to get another 100. We've got to take away the 168 because they're already parking somewhere. But another 100 houses in that area is going to decimate it. It won't happen. It can't. I feel very cross that I haven't seen some of this. Now I've got to go home and start reading again because I just feel totally that there's a plan in here on this Avison and Young that doesn't even include Blackshot's playing field and the tennis courts. The red line just goes around the site. So we've put out that they're going to take this little bit of green belt here, and that's not included in that. So I'm not happy. I don't really think I really want to say any more because I want this to happen so much because I fought 15 years for this to get them down in the first place. But to put another 100 homes in, which is saying people are going to have 2 cars, so that's 200 cars you're going to put in my area, which it can't stomach because there is just no... People are parking now on the grass verges, on the pavements and everywhere. It's just because people are working from home, so it's just becoming untenable. You just can't get another... You won't get another 100 or 200 cars in that area at all. I don't wish to go on, Julian, because I think I'm grateful for your report. I really am, and I am passionate because this is my baby in a way, but I just feel that we have not utilised any land. If we're going to pick up a little bit of green belt near the rugby club, then we've got green belt over the other side of the A13 with the horses on, travellers' horses, which has been rented out to a farmer who's rented it out to the travellers to put their horses on. It's been like that for 30 years. And we could use part of that because the other part gets in the way of the crossing, whatever happens to that. But if we can use part of that, because if the crossing is going to come across there, it's going to decimate my new school. So that the argument's not there. We've got a new road gone in, which would be handy. So I don't really think we've looked at all the possibilities of what we could do. We own land in Blackshots, which belongs to the council. We could utilise that as well. I think we're using a bit of something that is easy to use for that moment. So I'll leave it there because
So, Chair, thank you. Nobody in the room will be surprised when I say that I understood and expected Councillor Redsel's position, and I expected much of what she said. I think there are just a couple of points I would make, and I think, as she rightly says, I mean, obviously, as I say, you can make recommendations tonight if you choose, and of course she will no doubt make her recommendations to Cabinet and in due course to Planning Committee when, as I say, it will look different from what it looks now. But I think the couple of points that are worth making is that Councillor Edsall does know that we and Levitt Bernstein have looked exhaustively around the area. We've looked at the fields, and the conclusion we've come to, and our advice, and as ever, she doesn't have to take my advice, but our advice is that none of those other sites are either feasible or deliverable. And of course, you're not taking one bit of green belt away to replace it another. You are taking one bit away and using it for the replacement of the tennis courts and the fields in trust land. I'm not going to enter a debate about the exact legal position of fields in trust, partly because I'm not sufficiently expert in it, but I am bound to say that good luck with trying to take fields in trust land without their approval. So certainly experience would tell me that. I think that I think we have looked exhaustively. I think that the most natural route to this development is through the land that's in the red line. Perhaps most importantly, at the moment, the red line is a cabinet decision, and the representation probably needs to be made to your cabinet colleagues rather than to us. But having said that, my advice then would certainly be there aren't any alternatives. I don't know whether to bring Keith in on the transport issues. I think it's fair to say that they have been a consultee, and of course they will continue to be a consultee as the development progresses. But I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Keith. But I don't think I have anything particular to add other than that we understand.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. To the Chair. So in terms of the transport, clearly we, as part of the pre-application part of the pre-application consultation, planning engage with highways and transport colleagues, and in terms of what's proposed and what's in terms of the numbers of parking spaces, then recognising the stage of development that the project is at, but certainly the numbers of parking spaces meet council policy. There's the requirement to produce a certain number of car parking spaces for each home. So all homes do have dedicated car parking spaces, or enough car parking spaces to meet, the requirements. And so, I understand very well your concerns, Councillor, but we are working with our highways and transport colleagues, and that debate and that dialogue will continue as we work up, if this project progresses, as we work up through into the full planning application, and there will be considerable opportunity to review and consider matters as we get to that point. But as it stands at the moment, for the degree of the design that's progressed, then there are no major issues come back from our highways and transport colleagues so far. So that's where we are. It's not, as Julian points out, this isn't the end of the story, it's the start in terms of the way that the planning application develops. But that's probably as much as I can add.
Councillor
Thank you. If you, I'm not saying you, Julian, personally, but if you want me to use a bit of green belt for a playing field, why can't you build on that? Because it's right near Keir Hardy. So I can't see, that doesn't equate to me. I can't see the point of me land swapping 2 bits of green belt.
So, I mean, the planners are very specific about that they would not recommend development on that particular field because that is outside the urban area. As I said in my remarks about the report, there is still a challenge on the very special circumstances in the land that is within, and it would be wrong of me to pretend that there wasn't, but they are very clear that that land where we are indicating a potential playing field is outside the urban area, and that they would resist that for what I would probably call urban sprawl, whether that's the correct term these days. Councillor Edsall is also aware that if you go far enough in that field, and I don't have the map in front of me, so forgive me my slight lack of accuracy, but if you go far enough in that field, you get A pylons, and you will eventually come to land, and we can all enter a debate about its future, but land that for either temporary or permanent reasons is subject to the Lower Thames Crossing. I got it right, haven't I? For a number of reasons, the recommendation from the planners is that that is not a feasible site.
Councillor Spain.
Thank you. I was actually going to raise the point that Joy just made. I think it goes beyond the swap for the lands for Trustfield. I mean, we talk about what planners will or won't do, and on an earlier issue I talked about making assumptions about planning permission. You can't. We've already, as a council, given permission for the rugby club developments to take place, where they're going to get, you know, let's face it, they've got a temporary school there that they're going to turn into a rugby academy, which was land that were there. We've allowed a big school to be built on a greenfield site, which is going to have, I mean, every day I drive up and down them roadworks while they're putting the entrance in, and I dread to think what's going to be like when it opens, but we've done it. We've got the land that Joy has identified on the other side where the horses are. I'll go further to say we've also got land available to the other side, at the back of Keir Hardie, where, if you remember a couple of years ago, there was all in tyres, where it's a dumping ground, it's scrub land, it's whatever. That's available to be used. So, and that's our land. So, and I get the talk about urban sprawl. Look, there is nobody in Thurrock who wouldn't love to see us respect all the greenbelt boundaries that there are in Thurrock. But every single one of those people, if they use one smitham of common sense, knows that to meet the housing need for Thurrock in the future, we are going to have to build in the greenbelt. Now, that field next to the rugby club that we've talked about is, I mean, we'll lose a bit of income because presumably we're leasing it off to a farmer, but other than that, it's scrabby old land. The land on the other side is scabby old land that brings no great thing, and it is urban sprawl added onto urban sprawl. In the old days when I did geography, I'm trying to think, it was called linear development or whatever. That's the way towns grew. And you know, we have to build new homes. And I go back to the point I tried to make earlier. We have not explored enough possibilities. And had we done so, we could have been building these properties now. So when we decant the people, at the moment, we're picking them out piecemeal. I think the last time there was 39 people had been, or 39 families had been decanted, or whatever the number is. You know, and we're still going to wait an awful long time to find homes for those that are still in there to go into. We could have actually, proper planning, proper foresight, proper development, we'd have been building on that land now. So that when people move, all they've got to do is effectively carry the suitcase from one side to the other. And we're just not looking at these possibilities. We blinkered all the time. And it's so soul-destroying. For people like Joy who put their hearts and soul in it, who are local, who know it, who talk to the area. And I'm not being disrespectful. You're incredibly knowledgeable people. You know, you've forgotten more than I'll ever know about development and whatever. But we see solutions in very simplistic formats because we have to live with it day to day and we have to talk to our people. And we common sense tells us there are better solutions than we've got. There really, really are. And we're not, I don't see any, I see this business plan and it doesn't show any of that. And that frustrates me, as I'm sure it frustrates Joy.
Councillor Liddell.
Yeah, I mean, we don't do the planning application, planning procedures and planning approvals for our residents. We do it on behalf of the planning minister, and we set the rules, what is greenbelt and what is not, and they're pretty much set in stone unless there's very, very good reasons why you can build on greenbelt. And I dare say the reason the school got built was because we were very, very short of school places and it had to be done in an emergency. This isn't the case with this build, and it is quite common to do the little bit of greenbelt swapping. So, you know, I don't really have a problem with it, to be perfectly honest. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's about opinions, but if you don't think that this isn't an emergency situation, you've just said we built that school because we were in an emergency situation over school places. Well, I'm sorry, Steve, if you don't think we have a housing emergency in Thurrock, I don't know what planet you're living on. We have got a big housing emergency in Thurrock, and we should therefore be prepared to stretch the boundaries. That's a difference of opinion, but I have to state my...
Councillor Liddell.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand, but we've got a solution for 258 houses. And it fits within planning policy. And being on, you know, the planning committee, I do understand where they are coming from. So, again, I don't see any problem. If we build 258 houses, wherever you put them, that's a tremendous advantage. And I feel that if the planners agree with what's put down there and what is proposed, it will work, and it will work perfectly.
Julian wants to speak.
So yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on Councillor Spade's comments, and I mean, I think we've already rehearsed the thinking on the sort of financial and structural approach to this. I mean, I think in essence what Ishdeep and I have said to you is, in other circumstances, we'd be delighted to recommend you other models of doing it, but just at the moment, and for this scheme, this is, I think, where we are. I mean, on the planning issue, I mean, I neither set Greenbelt policy at a national level nor your policy at a local level. There are many situations in which I think we would be delighted to build on other things, and quite frankly, for you as a council, you're quite right not to have to do the decanting under pressure, and to be able to do it in a slightly different route would no doubt be very valuable. But I can't come before you and say I think you should build here if I've got a recommendation from the planners that you can't. I mean, it's as simple as that. And as I think we've said elsewhere already, that there is going to be a planning committee to determine this, and those of you who don't agree with the red line would need to make your arguments there. I have to say, I can follow the planner's argument that says, albeit he's unfortunate in its location and taking over the tennis courts, but actually taking a little bit off the edge is better in planning terms than going into a wider field. So I can see the argument, but ultimately we have to take their advice on that. You did remind me of one point I should have made to Councillor Ritz or Councillor Spate, and again, she has heard me say this before, but of course she doesn't want to go back up high. She doesn't want to go to 6-storey as opposed to 12-storey. But I have to point out to her, as I have done before, the inevitable consequence of going lower is that you take more land.
Councillor Rental.
Yeah, just going back to Neil's point, really, where we have got land we own, which is scrubland, and we're not using it. It's just, as Neil said, motorbikes were used to fly all over it for months and months and months until we did something about that. So that is land just sitting there doing nothing. We even had thoughts of putting a crematorium there or doing something with it, because it's our land and we're not utilising it. You mentioned urban sprawl a little while ago. Well, on the back of, or to the front of the college, Palmer's College, there was a bit of scrubland that got an application, or an outline application, with the TDGDC. And that is now being slightly cleared. No planning's come forward yet, but that is urban sprawl. We don't know, when that gets built on, whose ward that's going to belong to. Because that will be my ward, Councillor Maney's ward, Councillor Gledhill and Tom Kelly's ward. So that we don't know who's going to own that bit, because it's right in the middle. That is joining two wards together. So that is urban sprawl being used. Now that, to me, it is doing the same thing. So I will fight it. You know that, Julian. You know that I will go to the ends of the earth for this one, but I do feel that we haven't utilised the land we've got, which we could do it. You could, if you wanted to, go for the 500 and build on that piece of land. It might need making up a bit, but that's been done. You know, in parts of Blackshots Lane, Wentworth Close, that was filled in because across the field we have 22 holes, which nobody knows about. We have 22 crevices under there. But they haven't gone anywhere. But we have had a couple of houses go down because we've got caverns under there, which sits from Hangman's Wood across. So that's got to be looked into too, because you're taking part of the field, or you may take part of the field, which has got holes in. So that bit of stuff we've got, or a bit of land we've got over the other side, is our land. you could perhaps go for the 500 and put this lot in with it. You know, I think I'll give up there because I need to go home and you all need to go home and I've had enough.
Councillor Spate, and then I'll...
Yeah, and I will be as brief as I can. Again, Joy makes a really good point. And I go back, this council is just so lack of joined up thinking and so much lack of looking at history. In about 2010, Thurrock Thames Gateway Development Corporation produced a North Grays master plan, an excellent document which had houses going, and there was a pre-planned, so we've already had it, you know, and I've got a copy of the plan. It's a really decent plan, but which involved the school and all that. But nobody ever talks about what we did then. But then let's just talk about joined up thinking. This council is spending a small fortune at the moment to come up with a revised local plan. We've just spent fortunes going out to consultation with residents about designated sites across the borough, which would include the West Hornham village, which would include the Corringham North village, all of which are urban sprawl, which is down now as accepted policy for this This council is recommending urban sprawl, if you want to call it that. I call it essential housing need. We're saying as a council, we want to put, and if you look at the local plan, there's all those pink areas all around the borough where we build it. We want, as a council, it's our official policy of this council to suggest we build houses on these greenfield sites. Now, how the hell does that not sit, you know, how can you not take account of that in terms of talking about something happening at Blackshots? Because if we can put houses in West Horndon, and if we can put houses in North Corringham, and we can put houses in Fobbin, and we can put 1,000 houses in East Tilbury, and all the other houses that we're planning to build, you know, join it all together. And then we can, as Joyce just rightly said, you can have your 500 home joint venture project. Why are we not doing these things as a council? Sorry, and that'll make me, I won't say any more tonight.
Evelina.
So there's no way I'm going to try and address those two. I was just going to mention just one thing on financials. So obviously we are subject to no borrowing, and we are due to, and we are making sort of special circumstances cases. So we are almost on the verge of persuading DLUC and Treasury that this scheme might just about work, and that they will be giving us dispensation to actually allow us to borrow for this scheme only. So I totally see the ambition, and I am one to go big. I am, you know, there are absolutely big plans there for us to become more of an enabling council, to absolutely be going into those partnerships, joint ventures. There are, I think, steps we need to persuade the government that we can actually deliver something, and this is a test case. This and Teviot are test cases, whether they will allow us to borrow money, because as you know, we can't do this as a default. So I was just going to just add it there, and Mike was absolutely right to point it out, that if we can't get this kind of relatively small scheme done, we're really going to struggle on the bigger schemes, and I think it's a sort of baby steps to really persuade them that we can.
Okay, any more questions? Councillor Bass?
Just not a question, but maybe a comment, you know. I understand officers' point of view. I think the officers are looking at maybe some legal aspects and the potential crossing route, and then obviously, you know, if something is potentially marked for something, so I don't think so it's very kind of a wise way to recommend a certain place. But I also take, you know, Councillor Redsell's point, you know, and her concerns. I think maybe it's something, a point of, you know, understanding, or maybe like explanation, like, you know, why certain sites are not included or why certain site has been included. I think that might be helpful, maybe some individual session with Councillor Redsell or...
Well aware that each and every one of the sites she's mentioned tonight, we have visited with her and provided advice on that. So I can only ever proffer you advice, Councillor Hudson.
No more questions? No. Thank you. Okay, I will now move to recommendations. So do I need to read them all out again? Yeah, okay. 1.1, the committee comments on the design, development and database on the conclusion of the public engagement as a basis of the securing the next stage of redevelopment. Is that noted? 1.2, the committee comments on the next steps as recommendation below based on the business case developed by the council and advising Advision Young. Comment?
You'll have to put me down as no.
Right, you've got that. Yeah. 1.3, the committee comments on the proposal that the council progresses the Blackshot project following the self-delivery approach.
Commented, yeah.
Comment. 1.4, the committee comments on the proposal that subject to the government agreement of borrowing approval is given to launch the procurement process to obtain main contractor for further design and consultation and to delegate to the Corporate Director of Adult Housing and Health in consultation with the leader Cabinet Member for Children's Services and Housing Commissioners in Section 151 officer the decision to make necessary contract awards.
I know we've commented on that, Chair, but I don't.
Sorry,
but I don't. It's not gone through Cabinet yet.
No.
And it hasn't gone through anything yet, so I don't know how I can actually agree to that because I'm going to speak against some of it. So I don't.
No, because we are commenting, so this will go.
I know we're commenting, yeah, but I've got to make my views on that noted.
Councillor Renser. Thank you. Yeah, 151, the committee notes in accordance with the business case model, a budget of 70.385 million is required for the project. Estimated cost of the works to be funded by the HRA borrowing in accordance with the proposed HRA business and capital programme subject to DHLCU approval.
Commented, yeah.
Commented. 1.6. The committee comments on the proposed procurement of relevant advisors for the council and clients' technical team, subject to appropriate delegations on award of the Corporate Director of Housing and Health in consultation with Cabinet Member of Children's Services and Housing, the award of contracts. Commented. 1.7, the committee notes that the budget of 700,000 has been identified from within the existing housing revenue account of general reserves to support the provision of the necessary advisors which will be accommodated within the existing HRA balance or funded from the reserve should it prove necessary. Noted. Right, okay. Thank you. Item 11, work programme. What else with that?
Is there anything anybody wishes to add, bearing in mind this is the last meeting?
Yeah. As this is the last meeting of the Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee, I would like to thank all members and officers for their contributions to this committee. This concludes the business of the meeting this evening, and I now declare the meeting closed at 10:17.